Welcome to r/Am I the Jerk, where a wild Karen is demanding to have a baby in OP's house. A total stranger is demanding to give birth in my house. This has got to be one of the weirdest things I've ever experienced. Like, it's so far out of left field that I'm still trying to process it. Okay, some backstory. I'm 26 and I bought my house back in 2019 from this sweet elderly couple. They were super nice during the process, gave me a few tips about the neighborhood, told me which local plumber was trustworthy, that kind of thing. At the time, I figured that was the last I'd ever hear from them or their family. Like, why would I? They sold me the house and we moved on with our lives. Fast forward to yesterday. It was a pretty normal day until I got a knock on my door. When I answered it, there was this young couple standing there. They were maybe around my age, maybe a bit younger. The woman looked very pregnant, like she was about to go into labor at any second. Naturally, I asked who they were and if I could help them with something. The woman introduced herself and explained that this house used to belong to her parents. Cool, I thought. Maybe they just wanted to reminisce or something. Then she hit me with the real reason they were here. She was born in this house, like in one of the upstairs bedrooms. And not only that, her mom was also born in the same bedroom. At this point, I was kind of like, okay, that's an interesting bit of trivia, but why are you telling me this? And then she dropped the bombshell. She asked if I would let her give birth in my bedroom so that her baby could continue this apparently sacred family tradition. I'll be honest, I just stared at her for a few seconds trying to process what she was asking. Like, in what world would someone think that's a reasonable request? I politely but firmly told her no. For one, this isn't her or her parents' house anymore, it's mine. And two, that's my bedroom, the place where I sleep, unwind, and binge watch Netflix. I'm not about to let some stranger come in and give birth there. She did not take it well. She tried to guilt trip me, saying how important this was to her and her family, but I wasn't budging. I told her again that I wasn't comfortable with this idea and that they needed to find another place to deliver the baby. Hospitals exist for a reason, you know? At that point, the guy she was with chimed in and said something about how it wouldn't hurt to let them use the space for just a day or two. I told them both that this wasn't up for discussion and I closed the door. I thought that was the end of it. Later, I was telling my friends about the whole ordeal, expecting them to find it as bizarre as I did. Most of them were like, yeah, that's insane. Who does that? But one friend, let's call her Sarah, thought I was being cruel by turning down a pregnant woman. She said I could have worked out some kind of arrangement, like letting them use the bedroom for a fee or something like that. I couldn't believe it. I mean, would you want strangers in your house, let alone your bedroom, for something as personal and messy as childbirth? For context, we were all hanging out and having a good time, so I figured Sarah wasn't being serious. But when I asked her about it again today, she legit thought she'd imagined the conversation. Once she realized it actually happened, she immediately backtracked and said it was a terrible idea for so many reasons: liability, health concerns, and the sheer weirdness of it all. So no hard feelings there. She was just out of it when she said that. But it gets better, or worse, depending on how you look at it. After this whole thing, I managed to track down the contract info for the older couple who sold me the house. Shout out to my realtor. I emailed them to ask if they knew anything about this woman. Turns out, she's actually their daughter. She's really pregnant, and they've cut her off because of her, let's just say, unstable behavior. Now, I'm not worried about what might happen next. The cops told me they can't do anything unless she actually tries something. So my next step is to talk to someone in the court system about getting a protection order or something like that. I'm not taking any chances. So yeah, that's my life right now. But am I the jerk for not letting this woman give birth in my house, or is this as insane as it feels it is to me? Maybe afterwards she can raise her child in your house, like her mother did with her. Not the jerk. I actually can't get over the fact this woman knocked on your door and even asked. What a bizarre thing to do. Obviously not the jerk, and your friend is just silly. Am I the jerk for leaving my Bumble date stranded at a restaurant? A couple of months ago, I matched with Anna on Bumble. Right off the bat, I thought we clicked very well. She had this super funny and down-to-earth vibe that made her really easy to talk to. We started FaceTiming, and our conversations were generally fun and outgoing. I felt like we could talk for hours without running out of things to say, which is rare for me. Fast forward to last week, we decided it was time to meet up in person. I suggested this really nice restaurant I've been wanting to try. It was a bit out of way for both of us, but I thought it would be worth it to make the date feel special. Anna agreed and asked if I could pick her up beforehand and then drop her off at her best friend's place after. She mentioned she had a movie night planned with her best friend afterward, and honestly, I didn't mind. I figured it's not unusual to have plans after, and I was happy to give her a ride. So I picked Anna up and we headed to the restaurant. From the moment she got in my car, the vibe was great. We were laughing, chatting, and it felt like we had known each other for a lot longer than a couple of months. The dinner itself went even better than I expected. We talked about everything, our goals, funny stories from our childhoods, even random stuff like whether pineapple belongs on pizza. It does, by the way. Anna also had a couple of drinks since I was driving, and she seemed relaxed and happy, which made me feel like the date was a success. But then, right at the end of the date, things took an awkward turn. As we were getting ready to leave, Anna casually asked, "Hey, can you drop me off at Josh's instead of my best friend's place?" At first, I was confused, so I asked, "Who's Josh?" She immediately looked like she wanted to take it back. There was this awkward pause before she admitted that Josh was her guy best friend. She apologized right away, but I told her that there was no need to apologize. I was just curious. So I asked her a little bit more about Josh. That's when Anna, being the honest person she is, said something that I was not ready for. She told me she and Josh occasionally have movie nights and that during these movie nights, they sometimes make out. She stressed that it doesn't go further than that and assured me it wasn't anything serious. She also said she really liked me and saw potential for something long-term between us, which is why she wanted to be upfront about everything. Now, don't get me wrong, I respected her honesty, but I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Here I was, thinking this date was amazing and that we were really connecting, and suddenly I'm being told that the person I just treated to a fancy dinner was planning to go to her guy best friend's house to, well, you know. I tried to play it cool, but inside I was spiraling. After a moment, I told her, "You know what? Why don't you just call Josh to come pick you up?" I couldn't wrap my head around the idea of dropping her off at another guy's house, knowing what would probably happen. I paid for my portion of the dinner, said goodbye, and left. She looked really sad when I walked away, and I won't lie, I felt kind of bad about it afterward. Later that night, I called my sister to get her take on the whole thing. I laid it all out, how great the date was, the bombshell about Josh, and how I left her at the restaurant. My sister said I was a jerk for leaving Anna stranded, especially since she was honest with me about everything. She pointed out that Anna didn't do anything wrong by telling me about her situation and that I could have at least dropped her off before ending things. But here's the thing, how could I be expected to sit there, take Anna out for a super nice dinner, and then turn around and deliver her to another guy's house where she'd probably end up making out with him? I told my sister I had enough self-respect not to play chauffeur in that situation. So now I'm wondering, was I wrong? I know Anna was sweet and honest with me, but the whole thing just felt like too much. What would you have done in my shoes? Update. At the end of the day, the reason I posted was because I felt guilty about what I did, and I agreed more with the comment saying I was in the wrong. Also, my sister has never once given me bad advice, and I think her assessment was right this time too. Since I left Anna at the restaurant last week, she texted me a couple of times, but I ignored those messages. A few hours ago, I finally opened them, and I was honestly surprised. Instead of lashing out at me, she just apologized again and said she was willing to stop seeing Josh if it meant we could continue our relationship. She also mentioned that after the dinner, she took an Uber back home and didn't go to Josh's. I texted Anna back and told her there was no reason to apologize. I admitted that I shouldn't have left her stranded at the restaurant and that I should have also paid for her meal since I was the one who invited her to an expensive restaurant in the first place. I asked for her Venmo to reimburse her, but Anna said she didn't care about the money and asked if we could continue our relationship. However, I realized I didn't have the same feelings for Anna anymore. I texted her directly that I didn't think we were compatible and that I didn't want to continue things. We chatted a bit more, and Anna was very respectful of my decision, though she admitted she was sad. I also admitted it was tough, but I genuinely believe it's best for the both of us to move on. That was the final text exchange. I definitely think there are valuable lessons I've learned from this whole situation. Thank you for your input. I actually think this is fairly reasonable. It's nice that you both recognized your own mistakes and what happened, and that, at least from the sounds of it, you were both respectful. That being said, I agree that this relationship probably isn't a great idea to keep going. I wish you all the best. I wonder what next steps look like for Anna. This arrangement with Josh will likely torpedo any future relationship chances if she doesn't immediately bring it up and ensure her date is okay with it. Anyway, good on you. Why on earth would you go on a date with someone and then ask them to drop you off at your friend with benefits, and then expect them to want to continue a relationship with you? What planet are you living on? Have my cake and eat it too land? Some people get really comfortable in their weird life with no checks and balances to the point they'll go out there without even realizing that they're living a weird life outside of what most people will accept. Nothing wrong with friends with benefits, but continuing one when you're trying to date and find a long-term partner is an interesting choice. Won't cancel the service plan? I'd like to file a claim, please. So, my parents recently had a house fire. Thankfully, it wasn't their fault, but the damage was still devastating. While the house didn't burn down all the way to the ground, this part matters later, it was basically a total loss because of the heat, smoke, and structural damage. The good news is they have excellent replacement insurance, so while dealing with the restoration and waiting to rebuild is going to suck, they're in the best possible situation under the circumstances. Now, my parents also have one of those appliance service plans. You know, the kind where you pay a monthly fee and they send someone out to troubleshoot or repair any covered appliances. If it can't be fixed, they'll replace it. They've got the total coverage plan, meaning it covers everything. Kitchen appliances, the washer and dryer, the chest freezer, and even the extra fridge in their mudroom. It's a solid plan when everything's working normally. But here's the problem. Since the house is completely uninhabitable, my parents obviously don't need the appliance coverage anymore. So my mom calls up the service company to cancel the plan and asks if they can prorate the charges for the rest of the month. She explains the whole situation to the customer service rep, saying something like, "Hey, we've had a house fire and we're living in short-term housing right now. The house isn't usable and we don't need this service anymore." The rep? They come back with, "Sorry, we can't prorate this month's payment, and actually, we also can't cancel the service for the next billing cycle. You're stuck paying for the rest of this month and next month too." Cue my mom getting understandably frustrated. She tries to reason with them, saying, "Look, I get that you can't prorate this month's payment, but given the situation, can you at least cancel the service so we don't have to pay for next month too?" That's when the rep decides to get a little snippy. They say, "Well, I'm happy to cancel the service effective today if that's what you really want, but you'll still have to pay for this month and next month." Now, let me tell you something. You don't get sarcastic with my mom. She's the kind of person who can stay polite and calm while absolutely dismantling you. And this rep, they had no idea who they were dealing with. My mom doesn't miss a beat. She says, "Oh no, we're not canceling the service if we're still paying for it. Please keep it active. Instead, I'd like to file claims on all of our appliances." There's a long pause on the other end of the line. Finally, the rep comes back and says, You can't file claims on appliances that were destroyed in a fire." My mom, completely unfazed, says, "Oh no, the house was damaged, but the appliances weren't destroyed. Since the plan is still active, I'd like to have a service technician sent out to inspect all of our covered appliances and perform any necessary repairs or replacements." Cue an even longer pause. The rep asks her to hold, and a few minutes later, a supervisor gets on the line. The supervisor, sounding significantly less smug, says, "Due to the circumstances, we'd be happy to make an exception and cancel your coverage immediately, with no further payments required." My mom just says, "Yes, thank you," and that was that. Now, for anyone wondering why my parents didn't just follow through with the claim on every appliance out of pure spite, the truth is, they got exactly what they initially wanted, and dragging things out further would have just been a hassle. Plus, the appliances are going to be covered by their home insurance anyway, so there wasn't really any benefit to going scorched earth on the service plan company. But still, the whole situation is a perfect example of why you don't mess with my mom. She asked nicely, she gave them a chance to do the right thing, and when they didn't, she played the game better than they did. Moral of this story, don't get snarky with someone who's already stressed out and knows exactly how to work the system. Am I the jerk for just deciding not to travel because my wife made reservations for Disney again? My wife Jess and I have been married for 13 years, and we're both 39. After years of struggling financially in our 20s and early 30s, we're finally in a good place where we can afford to travel once or twice a year. It's something I've been looking forward to for a long time, finally getting to explore new places, try new things, and make amazing memories together. The only problem is that Jess has zero interest in traveling anywhere that's not Disney World. When I say zero, I mean it. Every vacation we've ever taken has been to Disney. 9 trips. 9. Even our honeymoon was spent at the happiest place on earth. You'd think after nearly a dozen visits, I'd be able to rattle off all the parks, rides, and restaurants like a pro. But honestly, I've been faking enthusiasm since trip 1. Jess? She's still just as hyped as the first time. Every time we go, it's the same routine. Mickey-shaped snacks, mouse ears, the official hotels, the character meet and greets, rides, and of course, the iconic photo in front of Cinderella's castle. Then we come home and do it all again the next year. I'm over it, like beyond over it. I never even liked Disney that much to begin with, but now I feel like I've been trapped in some kind of never-ending cycle of fireworks, parades, and overpriced churros. Jess knows how I feel, but she just doesn't seem to care. For her, Disney is travel. There's no concept of exploring a new culture or trying something completely different. If it doesn't have a Disney logo slapped on it, she's not interested. So here's the situation. We're planning our next trip for April. Or more accurately, Jess was planning it because she always takes the lead on these things. As usual, she suggested Disney. I tried to be diplomatic. I said, hey, Disney sounds fun, but what if we mixed it up this time? How about Hawaii? We could relax on the beach, enjoy some spa days, maybe do some sightseeing. Jess looked at me like I just suggested going to Mars. She was confused, mumbling something about why we'd even want to go to Hawaii. I didn't press the issue, thinking maybe she just needed time to warm up to the idea. A few days later, she came to me all proud of herself and said she'd booked us a hotel in Hawaii. At first, I was thrilled. I thought she'd actually taken my feelings into account and made an effort to plan something different for once. But then she showed me the hotel she had booked. It was the Disney resort in Hawaii. Y'all, I lost it. I didn't yell or anything, but I couldn't hide my frustration. I told her that the whole point of suggesting Hawaii was to have a non-Disney experience for once. Her response? She said she was compromising with me and that I should be grateful for all the effort she put into planning the trip. I asked her straight up if she was willing to consider anything that didn't involve Disney. Her answer was a flat-out no. That's when I told her I wasn't going. If she wanted to do Disney, fine, but I wasn't about to spend yet another vacation pretending to enjoy myself while secretly counting down the days until we could go home. Now Jess is furious. She canceled this reservation and is trying to find a friend to go to Disney World instead. She won't even talk to me about it anymore, aside from some passive-aggressive comments here and there. Honestly, I'm torn. On one hand, I know marriage is about compromise, but on the other hand, I feel like I've been compromising for 13 years. I just wanted one vacation, just one, where we did something different. Not the jerk. If you're not excited about going to Disney again, it's okay to express that and decide not to go. It's important to be honest about your preferences in a relationship. How did this go on for 9 trips without you saying anything? I'd have gone mad after going a second time. At 39, it might be time to consider broadening her horizons and embracing more of what the world has to offer. Life is too short to be spent solely between home and Disney when there's so much out there waiting to be explored. Am I the jerk for not defending a girl I barely know after she was kicked out of the friend group for asking to be paid? I, 21 female, have been part of this group of 6 close friends for a while now. We're all really chill, and one fun thing we've always done is trade services. It's this unspoken system we've developed over time where we use our skills to help each other out. For example, I'll do someone's nails for free, and in return, they might do my hair or something else they're good at. The idea is that it's fair and within the same price range. If there's a big gap, like if my nails are worth £100 and their service is worth $60, they usually just pay the difference. No pressure, no drama. It's always been a fun way to support each other and save a little money. So 2 months ago, a new girl joined our group. Let's call her Jane, who's 22. Jane seemed really cool at first. She makes her own clothes, like custom t-shirts and accessories, which I thought was awesome. She clicked with everyone pretty quickly, and we were all happy to include her in our little circle. Early on, Jane started talking about how much she loved my nails and how she couldn't afford to get hers done professionally. So, being nice, I suggested we do a trade. I'd do her nails, and in return, she could give me some of her custom clothing or accessories. It seems like a win-win, right? When the day came, I did her nails, which were pretty intricate and took a while. The design she wanted ended up being worth £160, but I was fine with it because I thought it was a fair trade. Afterward, I picked out some stuff from her collection and I intentionally kept it modest. I left with about £70 worth of clothes and accessories. Honestly, I didn't want her to feel overwhelmed, so I told her not to worry about the remaining £90. I figured it was no big deal. I liked the stuff I got, and I thought it was a good experience. Plus, I got to hang out with Jane one-on-one, and it was fun chatting with her, or so I thought. Fast forward to Wednesday. Out of nowhere, I get this long text from Jane. She's apologizing and saying she can't afford to give away £70 worth of her stuff, and that she needs me to pay her back ASAP or return the items. I was honestly confused. I thought we were crystal clear on how the trades worked. No one in the group has ever been forced into a trade, and Jane agreed to it up front. So I apologized and told her I didn't have some of the smaller items anymore because I'd planned to gift them to my sister for her birthday. I also reminded her about the trade agreement and said I could pay her when I get my paycheck if that's really what she wanted. But it didn't stop there. Jane kept pushing me to just pay her back immediately. Then she took it to our group chat and started venting about how I wasn't paying her for the clothes. She even let it slip in the chat that it was a trade, and everyone called her out, saying you can't back out of an agreement weeks after the fact. You'd think that would be the end of it, but no. Jane then went on TikTok to post about how I stole from her and refused to pay her back. She painted me as some sort of villain, and it actually got attention. I started getting random messages from people accusing me of being a thief. When the rest of the group saw what she was doing, they unanimously decided to kick her out. Here's where it gets tricky. While Jane's no longer part of the group, the drama has left some cracks. Half of my friends think I should have just paid Jane because she seems to be struggling financially and they feel bad for her. The other half are on my side, saying I'm under no obligation to pay her because the trade was agreed upon, and she can't just change the terms after the fact. To make matters worse, I've been feeling pretty guilty. I never wanted to cause Jane stress, but at the same time, this whole thing feels unfair. She agreed to the trade, and I even let her off the hook for the 90-pound difference. I've always been clear about how these trades work, and I've never had any issue with anyone in the group. Jane, however, seems convinced that I'm the bad guy here. So now I'm stuck. Half my friends think I'm in the wrong, Jane's made it clear she hates me, and I'm questioning if I handled this right. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. From the beginning, you made the terms of the trade in your group clear. She agreed to it. It's not your responsibility to anticipate that she would regret it or manage her finances, in which case, shouldn't you ask her for the money for your nails? My new coworker demands to be called Miss Potter. I've been with my company for 6 years now. We are very informal with each other and have a fairly laid-back culture. The company president is Dave. My boss is Lou. I tell employees who call me Mr. Smith, fake name, that my name is Dennis and that there's no need for formality. We recently hired a new employee. The fake name that I will give her for this post is Jenny Potter. In coming on board with us, Jenny signed all of her emails as Miss Potter. When she answers the phone, it's, "Good afternoon, this is Miss Potter speaking." When she calls me, it's, "Good morning, Dennis, this is Miss Potter." And my response is always, "Good morning, Jenny, how can I help you?" If I send an email to Jenny, the response is signed by Miss Potter, emphasis hers. She is 3 levels below me in a different line of report in terms of company hierarchy, so her supervisor's boss reports to someone on the same level as me, if that makes sense. It got back to me that she thinks I'm disrespectful for not calling her Miss Potter when I speak to her. When I speak to others about it, most state that they just ignore it. Don't use a name to address her or respond to her queries, and let her call herself whatever she wants to. My boss thinks it's idiotic and that she's not at any level within the company to demand that. When I told my wife, she replied that it's obviously a button for this woman, and I'm being a jerk by antagonizing her. My counterpoint to this is that nobody in the company gets addressed formally, and if I don't call my boss or his boss by anything but their first names, I'm not going to formally address another employee several layers down the hierarchy. You're the jerk. She's being very polite about how she wants to be addressed, and you're being a jerk about it. She wants to be called Miss, call her Miss. Your position doesn't excuse this behavior, in fact, it makes it worse. She's not being that polite by demanding she be addressed with an honorific when no one else is. She's demanding she be addressed with more respect than anyone else at the company. Asking someone to refer to you as Mr. or Mrs. when everyone is on a first-name basis is the same as asking someone to call you sir or ma'am. He's allowed to be uncomfortable with that, and it makes sense that him being her superior makes it even weirder. It would be like having to call someone who works for you ma'am, or like students referring to a teacher by their first name and the professor responding with, "Good to see you as well, Mr. Smith." You know who historically gets referred to by their first name and asked to respond formally? Servants, typically. So yeah, the reason his position is relevant is because she's asking him to verbally refer to her as his superior when he speaks to her, even though she's dramatically inferior to him at the company. Edit. Her reasonable recourse is to ask to be called by her last name. "Hey there, Potter, how's it going today?" Very common practice, very normal. No honorific or implied relationship. Very simple. And she's clearly already comfortable using the last name, so it would be unreasonable to say that Miss Potter is significantly different enough from just Potter to upset her. He gets to decide to be called by his first name or not. She gets to decide to be called by her first name or not. Just because he breaks the conventions of basic business etiquette does not mean that she has to, no matter their relative positions. You're the jerk. You're the jerk. It's about boundaries, not hierarchy. Maybe she likes to keep it formal so she can draw a line between private affairs and work-related stuff, or she simply isn't comfortable being called by her first name. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. Don't you have more important things to tend to other than gossiping about coworkers and being a blabbermouth? Honestly, you sound exhausting to be around. No jerks here. She's allowed to have her preference, and I suppose you should respect that. But at the same time, I find it a bit disrespectful on her part to insist on a more formal address for herself in a work environment where that is extremely far from the norm. It would be one thing if everyone used titles at your workplace and she wished to be called properly, referred to as doctor because she has a PhD, but you insisted on saying Miss or Mrs., but no one in your workplace uses these terms, so it's just weird. Not the jerk. This is why you always have to weed these people out during the hiring process. My husband is a hiring manager for a large company, so I get to see the ins and outs. He'll spend days going through years of a person's social media accounts. If he sees anything at all to give off the impression that they'll be problematic, he shreds their resume and puts them on a do not hire list. I can tell you firsthand that he'd shred about 99% of the resumes from people here on Reddit. You are all just about as loony as it gets. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or the new employee? Please let us know. I'd start calling her Harry. Am I the jerk for not wanting to continue my daughter's gymnastics training? When my daughter was young, we introduced her to gymnastics. She was totally hooked and kept asking for more and more lessons. We encouraged her, thinking she would eventually lose interest. Now she's 12, training 20 hours a week, spending weekend after weekend competing at high-level competitions. Problem is, she's 5'7" already and still growing. She's starting to have ambition for D1 scholarships or even the Olympics. That makes me very worried. Being 5'7" basically destroys her chance of going to the Olympics. D1 gymnastics scholarships are already rare. The odds of her getting one with her height are even more rare. It makes me feel bad that our daughter is very, very dedicated. She's almost always the first one at the gym and the last one to leave. She watches replays of her routine on our drive to training, turns down social events because she needs to train, does extra conditioning at home. Yet, I cannot justify blowing thousands of dollars a year and hundreds of hours in time every year to gamble on something with so little chance of success. All the hours spent at her training, driving her to competition, is already causing our family life to suffer. She under-rotates her skills because of her height and gets injured more frequently than others. Her academics are suffering because of her gymnastics commitment. Her life is going in the wrong direction because of gymnastics. The Band-Aid is better ripped off earlier than later. My husband agrees. I broke the news to my daughter. Frankly, it broke my heart to tell her to give up on something that she's worked so hard for. I told her I know she's a hard worker. She would get much better rewards if she channels her hard work somewhere else, like in school or another sport. She plays tennis with her family only casually, yet she was able to win a few U12 tournaments locally. If that's not talent, I don't know what is. Needless to say, she did not take that well. She cried and cried and cried, locking herself in a room, refusing to eat, saying maybe if she doesn't eat, she will become shorter. I told her over and over that I love her and I just want what's best for her, but she wouldn't have any of it. I tried to reason with her, telling her chasing a dream is a privilege, not a right. No use. My husband has now softened even though we used to have an agreement. Our family is now phoning us to try and persuade us to let her continue training, even offering support for training costs and pickup and drop-offs. If she has the right body to be an elite gymnast, or if she is tall like she is, but is not struggling because of her height, I would support her unconditionally. However, that's not the case. Sometimes I feel like giving in, but to think it through, I was the person who drove her to training and competition. I'm the breadwinner who paid for her training. It should be my right to call it off, especially as a parent. Help me out, Reddit. Am I in the wrong? You're the jerk. You're taking away her passion instead of trying to come up with a compromise that still allows her to train and participate in what she loves. I was a dancer and too tall for anything. You know what? I continued to dance into my late teen years. I was aware of my limitations, but dance was never taken from me. You're taking something away from your daughter without even discussing it with her or trying to work something out. I'm gonna say no jerks here. Ex-athlete here that peaked at a whopping 5'2" in a tall people sport. I completely see both sides. Constant overtraining is just going to lead to a lifetime of injuries. I'm 46 and need surgery on 3 joints, but I loved playing and no one could tell me to stop. So here I am, broken by age 40, in for a lifetime of pain. Maybe try diving. Same skills, not the same height limitations. Can you taper off? 20 hours a week, frequent injuries, no social life, and grades not as good as they could be are super valid reasons to want her to focus her energy in other places too. This right here. The people commenting, "You're the jerk," clearly have no idea how much time, effort, and sacrifice it takes to be a serious athlete. My younger sister was in the same boat, swam 6 hours a day and wanted to make it a career. However, she's 5'6", and even she understood that it wasn't going to happen once she stopped growing. Reality sucks, but it's just that, reality. You don't get to change it because you want something really badly. Not the jerk. All the "you're the jerk" people are totally unrealistic. You're spending thousands of dollars and hundreds of hours, and commenters are like, "But she loves it." Her grades and social life are suffering, and she's getting injured, and commenters are like, "But she loves gymnastics." That's irrelevant. Parents are supposed to step in when necessary. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or not? Please let us know. Parents need to be realistic with their kids. Reddit boy used to want to be a rapper. Imagine if his parents had just encouraged his delusions. Come on, Karen, can't you keep anything a secret? Take me to my job. I don't care if the car has no gas. This happened a few weeks ago. I've been with my boyfriend for almost a year. He's a sweet guy with a big heart who loves me a lot. The thing is, he has a narcissistic mom who thinks she can do no wrong and everything bad in her life is somehow my boyfriend's fault. The thing is that she is also very stupid and constantly forces my boyfriend to do things that go against a regular person's common sense that instantly backfires. My boyfriend, if he wanted to, could write a post in this sub every week, but he doesn't know how to write in English, so here I am. I was spending the weekend at his house like I usually do. His mom's health these last few months has been terrible because of a bug bite on her leg. She hasn't received instant medical care because she was more focused on her work than her well-being, and the bite ended up rotting a hole into the flesh. So she now has to be forced to take proper medical care. This woman is so incompetent that she's a danger to herself. Anyway, their car has been broken for many months, but my boyfriend finally managed to make it work again. I know nothing about cars, but it's a Ford Fiesta from I think 2010 or older. His mom can't drive, so as soon as the car was working again, started to use my boyfriend as her personal taxi, just as we expected. She wants him to drive her to work at 5 a.m. and sometimes also wants him to drive her back home, which is a pain because our workplace is far away in the middle of our city. But if he refuses, she throws a childish tantrum until he says okay. She literally could get away with anything by throwing tantrums, even for stupid things. Once she was angered because boyfriend forgot to clean a small corner after he left the entire house perfectly clean. Back to the story. Friday in the afternoon, he picked me up at my workplace and we got to his house. We took a highway when the car started to lose some power until it shut itself down. We ran out of gas. He was angry because of all the times that his mom had made him waste so much gas that week. Tried to turn it on, and after some trying, he did it. Every few hundred meters, the car would shut down again, and we had to turn it back on. We barely managed to get to the house, and we had to call someone to give us 2 liters of gasoline that I paid for in cash so we could arrive. His mom came back at 8 p.m., and we told her how we ran out of gas. The next morning, we were asleep when she aggressively knocks on the door at 5 a.m. to wake my boyfriend up. This is usual. After he got out of the room, she told him to drive her to work. I was buried in the bed and then heard the loud tantrum outside that my boyfriend told her that the car had no gas. She was screaming for about 10 to 15 minutes. "Yes, the car will make it. Son, I can't ask you for a favor without you being ungrateful. Why can't you take me to work? What an inconsiderate son I have. You want to make me walk with this leg? You will see that the car still has enough gas to get there." My boyfriend got into the room, took the keys, shoes, jacket, and stormed out. I didn't get out of bed. He was back in like half an hour. He told me that after the car shut down the first time while going uphill, she went quiet. The car did shut down 3 more times and she said nothing, maybe realizing that no, the car won't make it. They only managed to get to a bus stop where she could take a bus directly to her work, left her there and came back. The thing is that this woman never learns from her mistakes because it's somehow always someone else's fault. But at least she might feel quietly ashamed this time. And don't worry, my boyfriend and I have an exit plan so he can cut contact with her. We both have had enough. Am I the jerk for not wanting my ex's son at my Christmas? Trying to be concise. I was with my ex for about 7 years, never married. Lived together the last 4. Broke up 3 years ago. She has a 21-year-old son, Shane, who is now going to college in a town that I have since moved to that his parents do not live in, about a 6-hour drive. We've moderately kept in touch since the breakup, mostly just when he reaches out to me. I would have preferred a clean break from both him and his mom, but I've had a hard time totally shutting people out. I've not seen Shane in person since he was 18. Anyway, I got married last year and welcomed my first child 6 months ago. This will be my first Christmas with my wife and our child. Shane was going to go visit where his mom lives now for Christmas, but due to a pending storm, it's uncertain if he will be able to travel there. He called me last night and asked if he could spend Christmas with me. I was definitely caught off guard and told him while it's good to hear from him, it will be my first Christmas as a whole family, and I'd prefer to keep it to just us and maybe her parents who will stop by later. Shane was very upset, told me I was replacing him. I tried to reason with him that this is just what happens when adults move on in life. I said we could still keep in touch, but I wanted Christmas to be just with my family since it's our first one. He hung up and then later sent me a long text saying some super not nice things. My wife is glad I said no, but at the same time says she empathizes with how he feels and I should apologize but not necessarily have him over, but would support me if that's what I want. Am I the jerk for not wanting him to come over for Christmas? Edit. Shane's mother and I were never married. Shane's father is active in his life, he is just off and out of town. I only had met Shane a few times until he moved in during his high school years. He was very active in sports and extracurriculars, so he wasn't actually home that much for us to spend time together. Them moving in was supposed to be temporary after his mom got laid off, and it just kinda dragged into them staying. His mother was very adamant that Shane had a father and she didn't want me to attempt to parent her kid. While he lived at my house, I was basically an adult roommate. We got along well, but it was never a father-son type relationship. Can't believe the people that are voting you're the jerk. OP, you are not the jerk. You and your ex broke up years ago. You have your little family now. Yeah, the baby might not remember their first Christmas, but you and your wife will. Happy holidays. Not the jerk. An unbelievable number of people commenting you're the jerk don't seem to have actually read the post. 1. OP did not take on a fatherly role. He was explicitly told by Shane's mom she didn't want that. 2. Shane's father was and still is in his life and regarded by him as his father. 3. They weren't married. Not that important, but people can't read. 4. Everyone crying that Shane has nowhere to go, will be left alone on Christmas, etc. OP states he could travel to spend Christmas with friends or family. 5. Lots are criticizing OP for letting the situation go on as long as it has, but then want him to double down and have him over for an awkward Christmas with a family he's no longer part of and make it even more difficult to separate properly? Shaking my head. Yikes, dude. He was your stepkid basically for 7 years. He's stranded for Christmas. Would it seriously hurt you if he came over for Christmas? I'm grossed out by this, not gonna lie. If virtually anyone I have a stable relationship of any kind with asked if they could come to my house for Christmas, I would say yes, because it's Christmas. You're the jerk. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or not? Please let us know. It's an awkward Christmas. My ex's son that I haven't seen in years came over. I took a coworker's spot after they complained that I was arriving late. My commute to work got progressively longer and unpredictable over the past year due to 4 bridge closures occurring within months or weeks of each other. No date had been given for their reopening, so for the time being, short of heading off for work an hour or two ahead of time, you risk arriving a minute to 5 minutes late once or twice a week. Everyone had been impacted by the traffic in one way or another, which I mentioned because there was no way someone could feign ignorance. One coworker, though, didn't care about legitimate reasons for my being slightly late for work every now and then, and complained so adamantly behind my back about it that my immediate supervisor reluctantly wrote me up. I knew it had to be that one coworker because they would get noticeably irritated whenever traffic conditions were brought up. They would leave the room, loudly interrupt with unimportant questions or comments, or just roll their eyes. They're also known for complaining about every little thing. At one point, having played a big role in not having a seasonal employee rehired the following year. Despite that coworker, I love my job, so I started leaving for work an hour and a half earlier than before. My arrival time is now anywhere from 15 to 45 minutes before my shift starts. And that's when I noticed the annoying coworker always arrives about 10 minutes early and always has a very convenient street parking space available. I used to park on a different side of our building before traffic got bad and had never noticed that they had unofficially claimed that public parking spot as theirs. Most of the time, I'm at work early enough to get my pick of any spot in our always crowded employee parking lot, but no parking spot other than theirs makes up for my having to wake up at 5:30 in the morning. That coworker can't complain about my being late now. They know better than anyone that I'm at work way before I have to be. I've mentioned my arrival time to other coworkers with them in earshot, so they know I'm parking there out of spite. I've also gone as far as parking right in the middle of a space large enough to accommodate their car and mine. I have no idea if they've complained to our supervisor about it or not, but I really want them to have been stupid enough to complain about my taking their public parking spot away. Am I the jerk for refusing to buy my husband an expensive car even though I have the money? My husband, male 35, and I, female 30, have been married for the past 10 years and we have 5 amazing daughters together. Because of that, I dropped out of college and have been a stay-at-home mom for the past 10 years when we had our oldest daughter. My husband is the breadwinner and I take care of all of the chores and childcare. While my husband earns quite a bit of money, which allows us to live comfortably, he's also obsessed with budgeting. Thus, I typically only have enough for household expenses. For the past 5 years, I've been working on a series of books. I've been writing everywhere I could, 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, and while I sacrificed a lot of sleep, I have managed to finish my series, unbeknownst to my husband. I kept it a secret because he always considered it a waste of time. It was tough, but I managed to get an agent and was incredibly lucky to get a deal to have my series published. I was ecstatic, and when they told me how big my advance would be, I almost fainted. It's much more than I expected for a first-time deal. It's in the higher 5 digits. I haven't told my husband yet, and I had to borrow money from my sister to get an accountant. Ideally, I want that money saved up should something happen because I honestly don't know the details of our home finances or for our kids' future. Whatever will be needed. Plus, I would love to have some spending money without having to ask my husband, Greg. However, Greg found my contract and he is now demanding I get him a new car for Christmas. A very expensive new car, which would cost the majority of my advance. I politely refused, saying that he didn't need a car that expensive and that money was supposed to be saved up. I tried to explain my position, but he wouldn't have it. He basically called me a jerk without actually using the word. He basically called me a jerk. He said that because he supported me all these years, I owe him, and that without him and his money, I wouldn't be where I am now. He's told me that I either buy him the car or I have to start paying for household expenses half and half. The thing is, I would still be a stay-at-home mom. I don't know if my book will be a success. For all I know, this will be the only money I will ever get from my book deal because it'll flop. Am I the jerk for not wanting to buy my husband a car even though I have the money? Not the jerk. You've been working at home for 10 years, cooking, cleaning, looking after 5 kids. Let's do the math. Median US wage is about $70,000 per year. I actually looked it up. That would be about $700,000 over 10 years. Wages your husband hasn't paid you. Even if he's paid for costs like your clothes, etc., there's still quite a chunk missing in wages. Your husband doesn't let you in on his finances, so you have to live in uncertainty about you and your kids' future, and I don't think that's right. He should be open about things like that. Have you ever seen a bank statement? Do you know his internet banking password? You really ought to know. He's really secretive about it, and he shouldn't be. You really need to discuss these things with him before anything else. If I were you, I would open a bank account in my own name, put the money you earn from writing books in there, and not tell him your password or anything about it. I've seen a lot of these if we paid a stay-at-home mom what one would have to pay an actual employee. The numbers get big fast when you consider the job covers childcare, drivers, housekeeper, and a few other titles I can think of now. Plus, often it's a 24/7 job, so not 9 to 5. The fact that you people are now claiming that the husband who works all day should be paying his wife to have the privilege of being a stay-at-home mom shows just how far our world has fallen. I'm a stay-at-home mom myself, and I thank God every day that I get to stay home with my kids while my husband chooses to go out and provide for us. We choose to have babies, and as mothers, we instinctually should desire to love and care for them. Expecting money in return for taking care of your babies, that's just sick. And if you truly feel that way, I hope you never bring kids into the world. And you wonder why men's mental health is suffering so much. Imagine having to go to work all day so your wife can stay home with the kids, then having her expect a salary for doing so. You people need serious help. Not the jerk. And a higher 5 digits advance, you are aware that big chunks of that are going to be going to your agent and to taxes, right? I mean, if you actually get 50% of your advance in your pocket, you're going to be doing well here. And let's say that 50K is not entirely a lot for years of work. You likely could have made that much working part-time retail over 10 years. Save it. Fire me from my job with no notice? I'll ruin your entire company. So start of December, I was let go at my job because they didn't have the time to train me for the job role. I needed to take out a loan to survive as it took me 3 weeks to find something new. I was hired for customer service administrator role, and as I had never done that type of work, I was told I'd be given full training on the job. The girls in the office never bothered, and I simply learned the job myself. I was told my performance was more than they expected, but suddenly I was called into the office at 8:30 a.m. when I arrived and told they were really sorry, but they didn't have the time to train me, so I would be let go immediately with no warning or notice. I was completely shocked by this. To add, my contract stated that I was to be given 28 days notice of termination. The company I worked for uses government grants as a form of payment, so they would regularly claim they have done certain things they haven't to make more profits from the government, such as forging signatures and lying about what work they have done to gain more funding. Basically, we get funding on government for providing services to lower-income customers. That's all I can say. I was involved in a different department, but shared an office with the department responsible for lying about profits. It's a small company, and the director would constantly hassle them to forge signatures as we can get the jobs through quicker, and if we had an audit, he would go to prison for what was being done. So when I got laid off, not by a manager, but someone who worked the same level in my department, I was absolutely livid that they dragged me in a 60 to 80-minute drive for me to leave 2 minutes later. I got home and immediately called the fraud whistleblower helpline. Nothing came of this until a week later when they wanted more details. Thing is, I'm very good at being silent and taking in my surroundings. I was able to tell them which accounts had been forged and lied about. I also had considerable email evidence of what had been going on. So long story short, the majority have lost their jobs, including the people who couldn't be bothered to train me, and went running to the director to fire me, including the director who is now being investigated for fraud and facing time in prison and a massive fine. Always live by the mantra, mess around and find out. Edit. By company, it was a tiny one that only employed around 12 people, so a lot of sketchy stuff happened as they weren't regulated. Going through a messy divorce, and my mother still expects me to prepare for Christmas as usual. Context. I'm 26 and going through a very messy divorce. Been going on for nearly 6 weeks now. Only found out I was keeping my house 2 weeks ago and managed to get my cats out of foster care and bring them home. Everything I have is going into keeping this house running as smoothly as possible, as I'm mentally disabled, so have to rely on the benefit system. Whenever I can't buy physical gifts, I've always done baking hampers for my friends and family. Usually start at the beginning of December and get huge amounts of hampers made. My friends and family know what is happening, and the majority of them have said they'll wait until January to get their hampers this year, as I've been scrubbing and sorting everything out as my ex-wife left me to do everything. Paperwork, finances, house, and our cats. Haven't stopped for 2 weeks until I finally collapsed out of exhaustion and got the flu this past 4 to 5 days. I've informed everyone I can what's happening, and everyone just wants me to get back on my feet and get better. Everyone but my mother. Like I said, it usually takes me a month to prepare the hampers. That includes homemade everything: Christmas cake, gingerbread, cheesecakes, brownies, and tarts as a minimum for every hamper. I usually make around 10 to 15 hampers, so you can imagine how much work and time it takes. It's only in this last week have I sorted out the kitchen so I could start preparing. And then the flu has struck me down. I've been sleeping most days because I physically cannot stop falling asleep. My mother is coming down Friday night and Saturday morning. I've had to say to her that I'm too physically ill and weak to do the usual orders in that time frame. I said that I'd do what I can, but most of it will come after Christmas now. That's not good enough for her. She said she wants the bare minimum: 2 full-size cheesecakes, a vanilla bean one and a caramel one with homemade caramel. And she also wants 2 full-sized Christmas cakes. She's not a baker. She doesn't realize how much work just the Christmas cake is, never mind the cheesecakes. The only reason these are essential is because they're being gifted to family members who no one likes, but we have to impress anyway because it's on my stepdad's side. I'm just so frustrated and tired and ill, and I feel like she's being entitled. This was the reason I stopped doing a big batch of baking for her. She's always expecting a variety of time-consuming desserts ready whenever she decided she'd pop down, and it was my ex who told her to stop last time. I get it's Christmas, but I'm going through a horrendous time right now, and I'm just trying my best. Tell her not to come. Full stop. You aren't a free bakery. These things are gifts. Very generous gifts, too. Not something she's entitled to. I hope you feel better. Email her the recipes and let her know that you'd like her to make 2 extra for you as well before she arrives. And if she could make 4 trays of brownies, that would be ideal. I yelled at my mom that I hate Harry Potter and to let me live my own life. As my title suggests, my mom is a huge Harry Potter nut. She and my dad actually met in a Harry Potter IRC, like Discord but for old people, in the early 2000s, got married and had kids, and from day one decided to embarrass us for life by naming us after some Harry Potter and Star Wars characters. It's honestly been horrible. I have a stupid name, and since we were little, my parents have forced stuff like Harry Potter, Star Wars, Marvel movies, etc. down our throats. Everything is about dragons and magic and blah blah blah. I'm so sick of it. Every birthday, every holiday, everything is just organized around fandom. So just like every Christmas, the days leading up to Christmas, we have to sit down every night and watch Harry Potter movies. It's so boring. I can usually get away with knitting or drawing on my iPad during this, but this year my mom was like, let's just have a technology and distraction-free night every night. I arranged to go over to my friend Missy's house instead for like 2 nights. Missy's family is normal and likes things a normal amount. My mom got really mad and started talking about how it's a family tradition and how I'm basically rejecting her, and went on her whole thing about how you wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Harry Potter. I finally had it and just yelled, "Nobody cares that you were a big name in the Harry Potter fan club. I don't like Harry Potter. I don't like Star Wars. I hate Marvel movies. They're all so boring. Please just let me have my own interests." I couldn't help it. I started crying because I was just so frustrated because everything always has to be Harry Potter this and Star Wars that. And now that we're all older, they started doing Game of Thrones. Everything is centered around some kind of movie or TV show or book series. Just once, I want my family to band around something that doesn't have to do with media or these nerdy things. We live in Utah, where we have like 5 national parks, and even though I ask every year for my birthday, I've never been to Arches. Well, my sister called me saying that my mom was angry and to just come home and to stop with the theatrics. I told her I'm sick of having all this old nerd stuff crammed down my throat, and just once I want to have a normal time watching normal Christmas movies and not having to pause for lightsaber battles. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. And your post is a great warning for all those people still thinking about naming their kid Anakin or Khaleesi. You're allowed to have your own interests, and your parents aren't making life easier by forcing things they like on you. My boyfriend demands I wear an ugly sweater to Christmas dinner with his family. My boyfriend and I have been dating for a few months, and he invited me to meet his family for the first time for Christmas dinner. According to him, it's his brother's, he has 3, family tradition to make new partners wear an ugly Christmas sweater of their choosing as a rite of passage, his words, for entering the family. At first, I thought the concept was cute. I had imagined things like Santa getting stuck in a chimney, lights, bells, etc. But when they mailed me the sweater, my jaw dropped. It was probably the most inappropriate Christmas sweater I've ever seen. Without getting too much into detail, let's just say that Santa was participating in an act that was not okay to be seen in public. I personally thought it was gross, and it was bad enough that if someone at work saw me wearing it, I'd definitely get in trouble. I told my boyfriend that in no way would I wear this, but he said I was being a wet blanket and unsupportive of his family tradition. I said I'd wear any other sweater and would even pay for one myself, but he just called me a spoilsport. I do love my boyfriend, so I actually considered wearing it and asking people to not take pictures as a compromise. But the day of the party, I decided not to wear it last minute. I had to drive separately from work, so my boyfriend didn't know about this prior. When his brother opened the door, he eyed me up and down, and I could tell he wasn't happy that I didn't wear the sweater. My boyfriend was really upset when he saw me, and we argued in the guest room for a bit. His brothers teased me for being so uptight, and I could tell the jokes embarrassed my boyfriend. I ended up leaving the party early without my boyfriend, and we've been fighting via text since. Now, I'm thinking that I was the jerk for taking the joke too seriously. Not the jerk. I honestly thought by the title it was one of those cheesy ugly sweaters, but it seems like it wasn't that. It also seems like they want to turn you into the butt of a joke for the evening. Also, I'm guessing none of the males wore ugly sweaters either. Not the jerk. Ugly sweaters are one thing. Crude sweaters meant as hazing are another thing. That your boyfriend supported the sweater should be a little concerning. Honestly, if a family has a habit of hazing new partners, the best thing you can do for yourself is to set proper expectations immediately and not play along. Starting out with them in a compliant, don't rock the boat attitude is just kicking the can down the road. If they're testing your threshold for compliance and mistreatment, then non-compliance is key. If they're just mean people who are more concerned with their own hilarity, eye roll, than they are with making a guest feel welcome, then again, you're telling them right up front to leave you out of it. Not the jerk. And depending on your boyfriend's willingness to protect you now, in the beginning, when you're still in the honeymoon phase and everyone is on their best behavior, really take a long, hard look at this family's dynamics. With the expectation that the first year or two are when everyone's putting their best foot forward, the inference is that it's all downhill from here. Are you really looking down the road and seeing a good outcome here? Update. I really appreciate everyone who took the time to message me. After reading your comments, I really thought long and hard about my boyfriend's family and whether or not I wanted to be with a partner who wouldn't respect my boundaries. We got into one final fight when he nagged me to apologize to his brothers all separately. I told him that if he wore the sweater they bought me to our Friendsmas party, about 15 to 20 attendees, then I'd apologize. He immediately freaked out and said no, and tried to argue that they wouldn't understand because it's not their tradition. I explained that it had nothing to do with tradition, but rather with my personal comfort level and whether or not the sweater was an appropriate article of clothing. I asked him why he felt uncomfortable wearing the sweater in front of friends, and he refused to answer. He froze up, and that's when I realized it wasn't going to work out. He knew that it was inappropriate, and he himself refused to wear it in public. Yet he was too stubborn to apologize and be on my side. I told him it wasn't going to work out, so I guess I'm going into the new year single as a Pringle. A few friends found out about the breakup already, and this might have made me a jerk for now, but I sent them the photo of the sweater and explained what happened. I'm also glad to know that even people in real life were grossed out. I don't know what will happen with his friendships with those people, but it's none of my business at this point. Thanks guys, and happy holidays. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her boyfriend and his family? Please let us know. Good job, OP. Now that's what you call dodging a bullet. A Christmas bullet. Am I the jerk for upstaging my wife and our Christmas cookie baking tradition? I'm 25, male, and my wife is 23, female, and we have a tradition every Christmas where we would bake Christmas cookies and frost them with our friends. We'd then give the cookies out to friends and family and helpers. Every year, my wife would take on the bulk of the baking duties, insisting that only she knew how to bake them right and only letting whoever is helping frost them. She always insisted on doing all the baking because frosting is the fun part and the only thing people want to do. Usually this frosting and baking marathon would last until the wee hours of the morning and start around noon. Well, this year, for reasons that aren't relevant to this post today, she won't be available on the day we normally do all of this. She was sad that we wouldn't be able to do our cooking tradition. I said that I was more than capable of baking the cookies. She seemed to think I was joking and that I could basically never do it myself. Well, I said I'd try, and she wished me a sarcastic good luck. Well, in the run-up to the days of baking and frosting, I started running drills to optimize production. I started rearranging the house in various configurations, running tests on the dough we were using to see how long it took to bake, and making appropriate changes while running it by taste testers, substituting ingredients for quicker bake time while preserving taste, making the cookies as thin as possible without compromising frosting ratio, canvas space for creativity, and/or comprising structural integrity, etc. Come the day of baking, I have everything down to a science, and friends and family come in, I give them a rundown. After a couple hours, most kinks are worked out, and cookies are flowing out at a breakneck pace. Eventually, we start running out of material, something that never happened when my wife was running it. We start making runs to the store for the necessary raw materials to fuel our mighty cookie forges. By the time we were exhausted around 2 a.m., we had produced at least 5 times the amount of cookies we ever had before. Well, my wife gets home a couple days later and is weirdly upset. She insists the cookies taste weird, that we spent too much money, and that I was actively trying to make her look bad by making so much more than her. In truth, I ran blind tests to see if anyone could differentiate between our old recipe and mine, and no one could. I also only spent 40% more than previous years as I slotted in some cheaper ingredients and bought some stuff in bulk, and I had absolutely zero intention of upstaging her. I simply had the goal of maximizing cookie production. She says that even if I didn't do it on purpose, that I should have thought about how it made her look to our circles, and that I have embarrassed her, and she actually called me a jerk. She's never called me a jerk in all 3 years of our marriage, so I can't help but think I am. Am I the jerk? I don't know if you're the jerk, but it sounds like you took something she enjoys and was sad about missing and did it without her. I would be sad if someone did that to me personally. Edited to add my vote, not the jerk. To me, it sounds like she didn't think he could do it, or even better than her. Also, it's a tradition. Why do they have to stop because one person is missing for that year? She liked baking and basically gatekeeping it from others. He didn't do anything wrong with taking it over and trying at it for one time that his wife couldn't do it. Not the jerk. If it's a tradition you do together, then yeah, you don't do it on your own. My husband and I apple pick and strawberry pick together every year. I couldn't see myself going alone. It's a tradition that we do it together. I'd be hurt if he went without me. Not the jerk. You didn't do anything wrong per se, and your methods sound fun and add a competitive edge which enhances the excitement for some people. But no one likes to discover that a tradition on which they've spent time and effort and enjoyed doing doesn't need them at all to function, and may even be better without their hard work. Maybe consider telling your wife how much you and your friends missed her at this year's event, and that you'd rather have her and less cookies than so many more cookies without her. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know.
So sensitive. I can't believe she's making a big deal of this.
Blind me in traffic with your high beams? Okay, two can play this game. I was driving home from work and traffic was backed up pretty badly for a few miles. It was stop and go. When I get stuck in that, I'll usually back about 75 feet off the car in front of me so that I can hold a pace and move at a slow but constant roll, like the semi-trucks do. This way, I'm not participating in the bumper-to-bumper move and brake like the rest of the smooth-brain drivers. Some dude in an Acura crossover was behind me, and I guess he was getting upset because I wasn't 2 feet from the car in front of me, driving like a smooth brain. So he gets up on me and starts beeping his horn at me. I think to myself that it's funny as I turn up my radio. But then he starts flashing his brights at me, which is where I get annoyed. He's in one of those Acuras that has a super bright LED headlight. My car is much lower than his, so his low beams are already pretty bright in my mirrors. Bright enough that I don't want to look in them. The first time he flashed his high beams, it put spots in my vision for a moment. It genuinely hurt my eyes. After the first flash, he waited for about 10 seconds, beeps his horn, and then flashes again. Now I'm getting upset. I'm thinking, where do you want me to go? Do you really think being 2 feet from the car in front of you will make traffic move faster? Then he does it a third time, but this time he held them on for about 15 seconds. Time for the gloves to come off. During those 15 seconds, as I'm looking away from my mirrors, I see my 14,000 lumen searchlight sitting in my passenger seat, at which point I'm immediately overcome by a wave of chaotic, lawful excitement that he is just set in motion and cannot be stopped. I think to myself, oh buddy, you just opened the wrong can of worms. You're gonna learn today. I grab the flashlight and set it to its absolute max, 14,000 lumen brightness setting. The flashlight has a sensor in it to automatically dim the light if facing down on a table, because otherwise the diodes would get so hot they would melt the lens. The 14,000 lumen setting is so intense, the 57 watt-hour battery can only hold it for 180 seconds before the flashlight automatically notches down to a measly 9,500 lumens. During those 180 seconds, the light will burn through 15% of its battery power. For reference on just how bright this is, the literal sun emits a luminosity of 11,000 lumens per square foot on a bright and clear day. I turn it around and aim it straight at the back of my rear window. My car is pretty noisy, so before I turn it on, I rev up my engine to make sure that he's facing directly towards me when I flash the full force of an afternoon sun at him. I hit the power button and can only imagine the freight train of shock and pain that plowed over him. It was so bright, his automatic headlights shut off because the car thought it was daytime. With the lights on, I could see him clear as glass through his tinted windshield. He was covering his eyes and looking down, probably screaming. I watched him try to flip down his sun visor, but his hand couldn't find it, as I thought to myself, "Burn, you jerk." I imagine my facial expression was similar to that of a 5 or 6-year-old roasting insects with a magnifying glass on a bright summer day. After about 5 seconds of blinding light, I took mercy and shut it off. He proceeded to back way the heck off and move over to a different lane. Was this an unsafe thing for me to do? Absolutely. Was this illegal? Almost certainly. Was it warranted? Without question. Possibly the highlight of my year. Drive safe and don't be a jerk to the car in front of you, because they might just have the tools to teach you a lesson. Am I the jerk for sulking during my birthday trip that my boyfriend's parents hijacked? There's a lot to unpack here, but I've done my best to keep it to the essentials. In preparation for my 20-something female birthday that recently passed, my boyfriend, who's also in his 20s, male, booked an overseas trip. It was a surprise, so I left everything to him. A month before the trip, he informed me that his parents, who are in their 50s, would be tagging along. This was unexpected to me. I was uncomfortable, but the booking had already been made. I probably asked if we were sleeping in separate rooms, and he replied no due to financial constraints. Fair, but I later forgot that I asked. He did assure me that his parents would have separate activities and we would have alone time. The trip came around, a 3-day, 2-night trip. Day 1, while in transit, I asked why the arrangement. He disclosed to me that his mother had made a big fuss when she found out about this trip. He had been traveling with me a lot, and she was upset that he hadn't been making time for his parents. On the basis that her birthday falls on the same week as mine. Surprise, she insisted on joining the trip. So how could her only son say no? I did not take this new information well emotionally, especially because I don't like his mother to begin with. Also the fact that this was straight up an emotionally manipulative move. We check into accommodations, and I realize we're sharing one room. We have no privacy. We have virtually no alone time together on the first day. I sleep conflicted. Day 2 was where it got really bad. I woke up on the wrong side of the bed and with the flu. I was mentally spiraling, thinking how dare his mother impinge on a trip for me like this. I was close to crying and I couldn't even tell my boyfriend or cry. Naturally, I had zero interest in entertaining his parents. Later, I was told that I was frowning the entire day, unreceptive, disengaged, and when his mother spoke to me, I replied to her brusquely and avoided eye contact. I avoided conversations and slept whenever I could in the car. Day 3 and until now. The trip ended and I felt more liberated than anything else. A few days later, my boyfriend informs me that his mother was very offended by my actions on day 2 and she thinks I'm a brat who can't respect her elders. She doesn't want to see me for the time being. Oh no, I think. How tragic. God, how little I care. To be fair, his parents had done nothing to offend me during the trip. They did not impose on me any expectations or rules, and I would even say that his mother was accommodating and kind to me throughout. That's the one thing that makes me feel mildly bad. But in my opinion, they should never have made what was my birthday trip into a family trip. I regret acting so childishly, and perhaps I should have dealt with it better. But I am not apologetic for my feelings. Maybe she didn't deserve it, but she shouldn't have come. And maybe my behavior during the trip was because I wanted to punish everyone, scorched earth style. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Dear Lord, this whole thing is the biggest red flag of all time. Run now or start mentally preparing for them to tag along on your honeymoon. Not the jerk. Seriously, your birthday trip with your boyfriend turned into a family vacation, sharing a single room with his parents, and you were not feeling well, and you're supposed to entertain them? Oh no. It was your trip, and you were there for you, not them. You need to ask yourself if you want this type of crap happening all the time because your boyfriend needs to grow a spine and boundaries with his mother, or you need a new boyfriend, because if one of the two don't happen, you're going to be putting up with this for the rest of your life. Am I the jerk for flipping out on a dog owner for ruining lunch? This happened about an hour ago at the time of typing. I have a 3-month-old and wife is still on maternity leave. They came to visit me at work and brought Chick-fil-A for lunch. There's a canal area that has half a dozen decent-sized grassy areas with benches. There's a walking path along it that gets a decent amount of traffic. We find a completely empty grassy area with a bench. There's no one around and it's really nice out. My kid is sitting in the stroller just being chill. I'm talking to both my kid and wife while we're eating. My kid starts crying and I pick him up to soothe him. I see an over 50 guy walking by and he's eyeing us. Figured he was looking at my kid since he was crying. When all of a sudden, a maybe 5-pound unleashed dog comes up and starts messing with my wife's ankle. This really scared her. We're not exactly dog friendly. Neither of us grew up with dogs and we have zero interest in owning, let alone interacting with them. Then a second small dog walks up to us. I turn to the guy and say, "Get your dogs away from us." He just looks at me with this dopey look on his face, so I say it again. He half-heartedly tells the dogs to come to him. They don't listen to him. I'm like, "Come on, man, get your dogs away from us. We're eating lunch and don't want them around. My kid is still crying." My wife asks him to get them away too. He says to me, "You don't like dogs?" I'm just like, "No, I don't like dogs. I also hate bad," I used a worse word, "owners like you that don't leash their dogs and let them rudely walk up to people. I don't want your dogs around." He tells me I don't have to be so rude. I responded back with, "You are the jerk that decided to let your dogs occupy the same 10 square feet as us despite there being other areas to go. If you wouldn't have bothered us, I wouldn't be flipping out on you." He looked shocked that someone didn't adore his dogs and walks away, muttering at me under his breath. So, am I the jerk? Edit. This is not a dog park or even a regular park, just an area with multiple grassy areas. There's a lot of signage to pick up doggy doo and leash your dogs. Not the jerk. Leash laws exist for a reason. Not everyone wants dogs in their space. People have phobias and allergies are a thing. So for multiple reasons, it's irresponsible to have them off of a leash in the same area as others without knowing if they're dog friendly. The fact that you had to ask multiple times and he seemed bewildered that he was in the wrong is aggravating, and you're not obligated to be nice to people who don't have any respect for others in public. Am I the jerk for blasting Disney music? I, 16 female, have an older brother who's 19. He's one of those prank YouTubers and TikTokers. He's been doing this kind of content since 2017, first on YouTube, then expanding to TikTok for short form around 2020. He's decently popular with kids and makes some pretty good money from it. It's annoying for me and I hate it. As his little sister, I'm constantly having a camera shoved in my face even when I'm busy. He's pranked me by pretending to delete my school projects off of my laptop, throwing out my homework, study material, and once fabricated a fake report card that he gave to my tech-illiterate parents, which got me grounded for a month, even after I proved that my grades are good because they never go back on their punishments. He has also come to my work to surprise me and prank me, which has gotten me in trouble with my manager until they moved me to working in the back and not up front with customers because he had come in so much. With my money, I recently bought a Bluetooth speaker, and whenever I see him with his stupid camera, I blast whatever Disney music I can. Let It Go, We Don't Talk About Bruno, anything I can, because Disney is vicious with copyright and the footage is useless. He tried talking to me about it, usually on camera, to work out our issue, which means me stopping so that he can go back to making money off pranking me. Because I'm apparently very popular with his audience, he's been slowly losing views and followers, which he is blaming me and my speaker for. My parents are taking his side as he's providing for us and he's the golden child. So Reddit, am I the jerk? Edit. Please stop telling me to expose him or make a call-out post in exposing him. I don't and will not make a permanent social media account anywhere, so that isn't possible. You have a massively dysfunctional family if your 19-year-old brother's TikToks are providing for your family. Your parents suck and your brother sucks. As soon as you're 18, find a way to move out and be on your own. OP. I am. I have my job so I can save money, and I have some friends who also want to move out at 18, and we plan to find an apartment and move in together. My parents are trying their best. They're immigrants, and me and my brother are first generation. Before his channel, our family struggled a lot, so they see his pranks as something to endure so that we don't return to how we lived before. My brother sucks. My parents are doing their best, even if it's misguided. Based on your other comments, it sounds to me like the pranks are something for you to endure and not them. If your parents are off limits and yet they continue to reap the benefits of your brother's success, then you have every right to be off limits as well. This isn't something that is applying equally to your parents and it's unreasonable for it to be something that you solely bear the burden of. Keep blasting that music and protect that speaker. Lady can't tell the difference between food and the pattern of the table. So during last Saturday's evening shift, I had these two stray drinkers, a man and a woman, probably in their early 40s, wander from the bar area into the restaurant part and seat themselves on a table in my section. When this happens, we usually just politely explain to people, "Sorry guys, this part is for dining. If you're just here for drinks, the bar area is over there." And most of the time people are understanding. But also sometimes if the bar is really busy and the tables aren't actually needed at that time, we just let it slide. So I tell our hostess that some drinkers set themselves on my table and ask if I should kick them out. She says, "Nah, it's all right. They can be there for a bit. The bar is packed." So I just ignore them and continue to serve my actual guests. Just as I'm approaching the table opposite theirs to take an order, the woman loudly says, "Excuse me, the table is dirty," and points to a few crumbs in front of her. "Can you wipe it?" The way she said it kind of rubbed me the wrong way, because it was as though she was accusing me of not keeping on top of the cleaning. But actually, if you just randomly walk in and seat yourself on a table that isn't ready yet, or for you in the first place, then you only have yourself to blame if it's dirty, right? But regardless, I just said, "Sure, just give me a minute." I turned back to take the order from the other table, then went and got a spray and some roll to wipe it down for them. So I go over and wipe it down, but before I can leave, the woman goes, "There's still some food here," and points to, I kid you not, literal air. Like there's nothing there. But I wipe it down a second time anyway, just to appease her. Side note that it's literally Saturday night, and all of my other tables have guests on them, and these people aren't even supposed to be here, let alone be getting service from me. As I'm about to leave again, she shrieks, "It's still dirty," and again points to the flawlessly clean table. I'm dumbfounded, but I figure maybe she's confused by the pattern of the table. They're metal and kind of have that effect where it looks like it has water stains all over it. So I kindly explain, "Oh, I think it's just the sort of modeled pattern of the table." But then her husband, who had been inert up until this point, snatches the spray out of my hand and furiously sprays it all over this one spot she had been pointing at. He then thrusts his palm out at me to ask for some of the roll. I just kinda silently obliged and handed him the bunch I was holding, and he goes in on this table, as if he's literally trying to erode it into a pile of dust. Then he shoves the spray and roll back into my hands as if to say, "That's how you clean a table." Obviously, the table looks completely the same, and I, still dumbfounded, just stare at him and then walk off. It honestly takes me a minute to stop being confused and to realize that I'm upset. I don't really feel like tolerating their existence in my vicinity now, so I relay what happened to the hostess, who says, "I'll sort it out," and heads over to the table. Hostess, "Hey guys, really sorry, but we need this table for a booking now." We don't. Woman, "Do you need it literally right now?" Yes. "Like this exact second?" Yes. "Well, the bar is full. What do you expect us to do? Stand?" Yes. So they angrily leave and then stand in the bar for a good half an hour with their drinks, watching over their ex table, probably waiting to see if we actually do use it. We don't use it at all, and I'm fully expecting them to seek a manager to complain about us, but perhaps they had the humility to realize that they were just jerks and got evicted for it. My ex-mother-in-law demands to have a key to my house. So me and my ex have been separated for 2 years. We separated on good terms, and we get on well despite our differences. We do have a 3-year-old daughter, and he works a lot, so doesn't get to have our daughter often. For this reason, I gave him a spare key to my house so that he could pop in and see us whenever he wanted. I completely trusted him with this key. For context, I've never had a good relationship with my ex's mother. She's always hated me and accused me of ruining her son's life by getting pregnant so young. I was 18. She hates me so much that when I was pregnant with our daughter, she threatened to take me to court to gain full custody of my daughter. When I found this out, I was of course furious and did confront her. They were empty threats, as I honestly think she knew she'd be fighting a lost battle. She despises me, and honestly, I'm not her biggest fan either. I haven't much interacted with her since I left my ex, except from the fortnightly visits where I take my daughter to her house. Well, my ex has been coming over to the house as usual, but has not been using his key. At first, I thought nothing of this, but it became more frequent, and so I said, "If you're not going to use your key, I'll have it back." He then informed me that his mom had asked for the key, so that she had access to the house and to see her granddaughter whenever she wanted. He told me he agreed. I lost my temper completely. After everything I'd gone through in the past, I had absolutely no idea why he thought it would be a good idea to give his deranged mother my key. I told him I wanted it back immediately and that I no longer wanted him to have a key. He's furious at me, saying his mother is in pieces as all she wants is to know that she can see her granddaughter whenever she so pleases. I told him that was in no way realistic, and if she wished to spend time with my daughter, she could message or call me, and I'd bring her over with me there also. This wasn't good enough, and now him and his family are not speaking to me. So, am I the jerk? Edit. My ex only had a key as he would often come around dinner time, and having to leave the stove or stop doing chores, etc. every day became very tedious, and it was simply convenient for him to carry a key. It was a very minor inconvenience, but it made my day slightly easier. My kid was never left home alone. Update. Locksmith has been called. Glad I'm not going insane. Thank you all. Not the jerk. Start documenting these things. Exact dates, exactly what they do and say. This sounds like a course leading to a restraining order on the mother-in-law. Be prepared for that date. Stand your ground firmly on this issue. If he wants to invite her over while caring for his daughter, that's his choice. Giving her access to your home is a gross violation of trust, and you are right to revoke that access. Personally, don't ask for the key back. Just change the locks. It will give you peace of mind that you are safe again. OP. I had started documenting back when she threatened custody, but stopped when we separated. I definitely think I should go back to it and continue it. Thank you. Well, what do you think? Should ex-mother-in-law get to keep her key to the house or not? Please let us know. I think a restraining order might be a better option. I'm worried my best friend will try to hook up with my husband. I, 36 female, live with my husband and our kid. My best friend, Stacy, who's 37, has been staying with us the last few weeks while her home undergoes renovation. I met my best friend in college, and we are pretty opposite when it comes to a lot of things. She's far more carefree, particularly with men. She loves dating committed men. Wives, fiancés, or girlfriend, she doesn't care and will pursue for the thrill. There have been a couple of occasions where she's been confronted publicly by spouses and she just laughs it off after the fact. Although she can be a bit flirtatious, she's never actually done anything totally out of line with my husband, but she has with the boyfriend of a mutual friend. Now the issue. I'm going to Las Vegas in a couple days and I'll be gone for 5 days. I told her that I would prefer if she stayed somewhere else while I'm gone. She asked why, and I told her it's because of her history of going after men in relationships, and I wasn't comfortable with her there while I'm gone for so long. She got really defensive, hurt, and started to cry. She insisted that she values our friendship and would never violate that, but I held firm and said that this is just one of those things where I'd rather be safe than sorry. She'll be staying at another friend's house. I feel bad, but I also don't think I'm going to change my mind. My husband doesn't care either way and said she should understand why I feel that way. But my sister and a couple of our mutual friends said that I should trust her, and even if I don't, I should trust my husband. Am I the jerk? Update. I spoke with Stacy after work tonight and it was tough. She saw this thread and was upset that I brought it to Reddit and allowed strangers to judge her. She also acknowledged that what she does is wrong and said she's working on it, hasn't been with anyone in a while, and she has issues no one understands. You got that right. She said that more than anything, she's hurt because I really thought she'd hook up with my husband despite not trying to do so in over 15 years that we've all known each other. I brought up things she's done in the past that has added to my discomfort, and she insisted that it was innocent and she never meant anything by it. She said she's going to leave permanently because she doesn't feel welcome knowing she isn't trusted, and she doesn't want to stay where she's not wanted. She went silent for what seemed like forever, then said, I think you did the right thing. If the situation was reversed, I would ask you to leave too. Then says again that she has issues and she's not sure why she does it. She started to cry, and I told her that whatever she's going through can be worked on, and she can talk to someone who can help her sort out her feelings and give her some insight, and she said she would work on herself. We hugged, and I told her I'll be here for her while she works through it all. Not the jerk. For people saying, don't you trust your husband? 1. You know she enjoys ruining committed relationships. 2. He knows she's your friend. Why would you intentionally put him in a position where he has to ask her to leave while you are gone and tell you why he asked her? What if she made false accusations against him, either in response to him putting her out or another way to mess up your relationship? If she has changed, maybe this will be enough motivation for her to figure out why commitment to other people is such a turn on for her. If she hasn't, not the jerk for proactively protecting your family. But I too wonder why you let her stay with you in the first place, given her total lack of shame previously. Good on you for putting your husband, your family, and the future of your friendship ahead of her short-term preferences. My friend's mom refuses to pay me, so I'm suing her. My friend's mom asked me to be her social media manager. She cannot afford my regular rate, but we agreed on an amount that's about a quarter of what I typically charge. I got all the credentials and I went right to it. I increased her following, online visibility, and her overall social media presence. The first month I had a reminder to pay my invoice, and she eventually did. The second month, she cited issues with her online banking and asked my friend to pay. That never happened. We eventually agreed that I'll be paid the end of the third month. The agreed time rolled around and I got nothing but excuses. I was promised cash, but I never got it. These are usually very nice people, so I didn't think much about it. I got caught up in work and school and moving apartments. The next thing I knew, it had been over 6 months and I hadn't been paid for any of the services I'd been rendering. I reached out to her and she promised to pay up and said that she was having some financial difficulties. The agreed date rolled around yet again and she didn't pay me, nor did she even reach out. I called her and I got no answer. I sent a message. She replied 2 weeks later saying that something had come up. She promised to pay again and the date came and no word. She doesn't answer my calls and she leaves me on red. We had paused working on her stuff back in June of this year, but I'm still supposed to get paid. I've asked my friend twice to ask her to pay me. Now my question is, would I be the jerk for suing my friend's mom? Edit to answer some questions. 1. Sadly, there is no contract. I was naive and trusting. She's usually very nice and seemingly honest, and I thought she had integrity. 2. I'm owed for 7 months' work. I accept my part in this, but I was busy, and in the back of my mind, I'll have a lump sum to pay towards an upcoming expense that I had. Everything was good until I tried to settle the invoices. 3. We did agree on a payment plan. I haven't even been trying to collect the full amount. All this back and forth has been for 2 out of 7 installments owed. 4. She's not broke. She lives in a nice suburb, drives a nice car. Her bills are paid. She spoils her kids and her grandkids. Also, any advice on how to be less naive so I don't get taken advantage of anymore? I have a hard time saying no. Edit 2. By sue, I meant small claims court. It's not enough to warrant hiring a lawyer, but it's my money and I want it. It could pay for a vacation weekend, a semester in school, rent and utilities for a month, plus a trip to Costco. Not the jerk, but be prepared to lose the friend. Not the jerk. Best option is to explain to the friend what has happened and specifically show them the amount of hours that you worked on it. Explain that you need paying for these hours, as like all of us, you have bills to pay, and that if you don't, then you may need to take drastic action. That way, the friend may be able to do something, and at least will understand. Not the jerk, but seek legal advice before suing. A strongly worded legal letter may be enough to show her that you're serious. Well, what would you do in this situation? Would you sue your friend's mom or not? Please let us know. If I complete our agreed upon work and you refuse to pay me, darn right you're getting sued. My manager told me to take a break, so I did. I currently work at a Mexican chain here in Australia. A few months back, we had this really bad manager who was doing a placement at our store while her store was undergoing repairs from flooding. She's the type of person who looks down on you because you're a worker and she's a manager. When I first started, I did an opening shift with her. I hadn't done one before, and I kept asking questions, which she kept getting annoyed at, and kept acting like I should know what I was doing, and kept leaving her alone. She belittled me for not getting the meats out on time, aka 2 minutes past opening. She yelled at me because I didn't put coriander in our salsa when we were out of coriander. She yelled at me for putting too many beans on one burrito, despite me following the build guide. She had been yelling at me and treating me very badly all day to the point that I'd almost walked out and left her, but I kept my cool. It's well known in the store that I have hip dysplasia, which in turn really hurts my lower back, so I have to sit down for a few minutes and rest it. Afterwards, I'm usually fine. It's on my file and the store manager has always been fine with it as long as it's not during a rush. That day was an especially bad day, so after around 5 hours on my feet, my back was really starting to ache. So I asked her if I could sit down for a few minutes to rest as the busy period had passed. Manager:
Why? Can't you just work?
Me: I have hip dysplasia, so I need to sit for at least 5 minutes. The store manager has always been fine with it.
Manager: That doesn't even make any sense. No, you can't sit down.
Me: I'm in a lot of pain. All I need is 5 minutes. I'll come back out if it gets busy.
No, I don't pay you to sit down. Go take your break instead. 30 minutes, and don't come back until you're done complaining.
So I made myself some lunch and sat down in our dining room. About 5 minutes later, the busiest rush of a lifetime came through the door. We were still a reasonably new store and hype was high, so I'm talking a line going out of the door and it kept growing. My manager's face turned white as she started serving people who are ordering large amounts of food per person. She gave me these looks of distress, asking for my help with her eyes. Cue my malicious compliance. I sat on my phone, looking as relaxed as humanly possible, taking very big and dramatic mouthfuls of my food while watching YouTube very loudly. I had customers ask me if I could hop behind the counter, but I simply said, "I'm sorry. My manager sent me on break and said not to come back until I'm done complaining about my back problems, and I'm still very sore." She stared daggers at me, but I just kept eating my lunch. Customers started getting angry at her for not moving fast enough to keep up with the demand, but she knows she can't blame me because of what she said earlier, so she just keeps apologizing. She was running around the back to get salads from the fridge, swapping meats around, getting new sauces, basically things that a second employee is meant to be there to help with, all while customers kept complaining. I just sat and watched, smirking as she clearly regretted not just letting me sit down for 5 minutes, otherwise I would have been there to help. When the rush finally ended about 40 minutes later, I clocked back on and said, "Thanks for the extended break. My back feels so much better now," which incited many glares in my direction. I didn't have to serve even one of the probably 40 to 50 customers that came through the door. She treated me better after that and is now always her kindest self when she's around me, so I call that a win. Luckily, her store was repaired and she went back there. People said I was a jerk for this, but I don't care. Next week will be my final shift at that store, and I'm very thankful I'll never have to be under her management again. Am I the jerk for telling my parents they still don't have a biological grandkid? I have 3 adopted kids, and my parents have so far been good grandparents to them. They've never mentioned to me or my husband, or to the kids, anything about having a problem that I adopted instead of having biological kids. My brother and his wife have a 3-month-old son who was conceived with a donor. I know this because my brother's wife talked to me about it, but my parents were not aware. They treated my nephew the same as they treated my kids when they were babies, so I've never been concerned that my kids would be seen as lesser because they're adopted while my nephew was supposedly their biological grandkid. This is why I was so surprised and confused that my parents have been talking about how excited they are to have their first Christmas with their biological grandkid, and that they did a big expensive holiday photo shoot with my brother, his wife, and his son, something they've never done with my kids. They were the ones who suggested it to my brother. It's not like it's just because he asked and I didn't. The weirdest part was that they casually mentioned some of the things they bought for my nephew for Christmas. As far as I can tell, they're spending more on him than they are for my 3 kids combined, and it's far more than what they spent even when my oldest was a baby. In fact, when my kids were little, they used to say there was no point in buying expensive things for babies for Christmas or birthdays because they wouldn't remember it, and they'd rather spend the money when they're a little older. So my nephew is suddenly being favored over my kids. At the same time, my parents are starting to emphasize the fact that, as far as they know, my nephew is their biological grandkid. I pointed this out to them and said it bothers me. They denied treating them differently. They said I was being weird about money. I truly don't even care about the money. I care about the difference in treatment and that my kids might notice how little they're getting from my parents compared to their cousin. And now for the part I'm starting to feel awful about. I told them the truth about my nephew. My parents are furious at my brother for not telling them and thank me for telling them the truth. They keep saying he tricked them and gave them false hope about having a biological grandkid, which I guess answers the question on whether biology actually matters to them. My husband says I did the right thing because it removed all the lies and secrets, and if they didn't care, it wouldn't matter. But if they did care, they deserve to know. My brother says it wasn't my secret to tell, and I jeopardized his son's relationship with our parents. Soft, everyone sucks here. It wasn't your secret to tell. You were wrong to do it that way. But grandparents are super jerks, and so is your brother. Here's what would have been better. Go to bro, tell him what you've seen and how it makes you feel. Tell him that he needs to tell his parents, and if he doesn't, you will. But you didn't. So acknowledge that you handled your part badly, but that doesn't excuse everyone else's way worse behavior. OP's brother and sister-in-law don't have to say a darn thing if they don't want to. While I agree with the everyone sucks here judgment, OP isn't a saint either. I mean, let's be real here. She only spilled the beans out of spite. She spoke about a very sensitive topic instead of tearing her parents a new one and going low contact or no contact to show that she means business. If the situation was that bad, that would have been a reasonable option. Not the jerk. I'm prepared to be downvoted, but I'm willing to bet brother knew exactly how your parents felt about your kids and withheld the truth from them because he knew how they'd react. Sure, it was their info to tell, but they had no intention of saying anything of the like because they were enjoying the benefits that came with keeping their mouths shut. Your brother did not care that you or your kids were being treated differently or unfairly because he wasn't on the receiving end. Now that he is, he cares about privacy. Your actions might have been sus, but that doesn't make you the jerk here. Your brother, however, is. He was willing to do his own son a disservice by setting him up with a false relationship with his grandparents while teaching him that your kids were okay to be treated as less than. Nah, he got his just desserts. He just didn't count on eating them this soon. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or their brother or their parents? Please let us know.
If you're using a donor and you don't want people to know, don't tell anyone, because you know they're not going to end up keeping it a secret for you.
Karen wants pizza from a place that has everything but pizza. The other day I wanted a pizza. My favorite pizza place is in a supermarket nearby, one of those in-store shops. Now here's the way this place is arranged. There's the pizza shop on the right that sells only pizza and nothing else besides some refreshments. On the left, there's a grill-type shop that sells everything from hot dogs to chicken breast to potato salad and everything in between, but it doesn't serve pizza at all. And then there's the common seating area, which consists of 2 tables and a long table along the wall, between the two where you can sit down and eat if you don't want the food to go. I grab my pizza, and I see no free seat nearby when I spot someone leaving the first chair by the grill place on the long table. So I sit there and start digging into my pizza. I barely eat a slice when Karen comes to the grill. Cashier: how can I help you? Karen:
I want a pepperoni pizza with...
Cashier: I'm sorry, ma'am. We don't serve pizza here. If you want one... Karen interrupts.
What do you mean you don't serve pizza? This person here,
points at me,
is eating one.
He got it from the place next door.
Okay, so go and make me one too.
I can't. I don't work there. You'll have to go to...
What do you mean you don't work there? This is a restaurant. You work here. Give me a pizza.
Cashier: ma'am, I'm trying to tell you that we are 2 separate establishments. We don't have pizza. They do.
Then why is he eating pizza here?
Again, pointing at me.
Hey, why do you sit here?
Me: there were no other free seats.
It doesn't matter. If you ordered from the other side, you have to sit there.
Me: it's a common area. You can sit wherever you want, no matter where you ordered. So Karen thought the 2 shops were just one restaurant, but for some reason, there were 2 separate seating areas. Karen logic. Upon hearing the commotion, a security guard comes over. Security: what's going on here, ma'am? Why are you yelling?
This worker refuses to serve me and continues to say he doesn't work here.
Security: is this true? Cashier: okay, ma'am, I'll serve you. What did you want again?
I already told you. I want a pepperoni pizza with extra cheese.
Cashier looks at the guard and gestures towards Karen. Security: ma'am, the pizza place is right over there. Karen:
I know. He needs to go over there and serve me.
To make this short, the story pretty much repeats. In the end, the Karen leaves huffing and puffing and swearing that she'll never come back. The cashier actually apologizes to me about the inconvenience, and I said he didn't have to. Pizza and a show. This just made my day. Am I the jerk for telling my friend's mom she chose to have a child at 45? Background: my best friend and I have been best friends since we were 12. We're now 24. Her mom had her at 45. Now, before everyone tells me that's not possible, it is absolutely possible for some women. I'm not a scientist, but my friend is proof that it can happen, so I don't want to hear it. I also want to be clear, there's nothing wrong with having a kid while you're in your 40s. I don't give a hoot if you choose to have a kid while you're in your 40s. This post isn't about bashing anyone in their 40s. Basically, I'm married. We're financially stable, and we decided to have a baby. I got pregnant, and my best friend was overjoyed for us. She loves kids, but has been really clear that right now she's enjoying being young and doesn't really want to settle down. She doesn't see herself having kids until her mid-30s. Of course, this is absolutely fine. No judgment. During my baby shower, my best friend's mom kept pouting. She kept going on and on about how she's going to be extremely old by the time her daughter has kids and she won't be able to enjoy them. How she just wishes my friend would get pregnant and settle down now. How it's not fair to her that she won't be able to be a grandma. I mean, ranting to anyone who would listen. My friend looked really sad. I could tell she was upset. Everyone just looked uncomfortable as she was going on. After the party, when everyone left, I talked to my friend about what had happened. She admitted to me that her mom has been really hard on her about settling down because of her age, but that she's just not ready to, and she needs her to understand that. Flash forward to them meeting my baby recently. My best friend's mom launches in again. I just said to her, "But Christina, you made the choice to have a baby at 45. You had to know that there was a chance you might be pretty old by the time you became a grandparent. It's not fair to try and put Allison into a life she isn't ready for because you want to be a grandparent." She got up and left, but my friend thanked me later. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. She needed to hear that. She may also be worried her daughter will make the same miscalculation she did by having a baby later in life. But again, she shouldn't be disturbing everyone and needs to take no for an answer. Not the jerk. Good for you for standing up for your friend. Christina needs to realize that Allison will plan her family arrangements around her own needs, not her mother's, and it was probably helpful for both of them to hear it from you. Well done. I had my second baby at 41. I fully understood I would always be the older mother with him, but it's also pushed me to take care of my health and be active, so I'll be able to enjoy grandkids when I'm in my 70s. I know many active 80-year-olds. You are not the jerk. Am I the jerk for not going to my mom's house for Christmas and refusing to make my little sister go too? I'm 17 and my little sister is 15. Our dad passed about 10 years ago. It was very sudden. One day he kissed and hugged me and my sister and told us that he loved us, and then we never heard from him again. At the time, I couldn't fully grasp why he chose to stay away, even though Mom tried to explain it to us. I missed him and I thought I did something wrong to make Dad mad. I repeatedly called his phone hoping he would answer, but it always went directly to his voicemail. At his funeral, I realized I would never see him again and I broke down. I don't remember much from that day, except Uncle David held me the entire time. He held me throughout the funeral, during the drive home, and as I fell asleep that night. Uncle Alan did the same thing with my sister. It wasn't easy growing up with just my mom and sis, but not as tough as it could have been because the two uncles were always a phone call away. Whenever we needed help with school, one of the uncles was there to tutor us. One of them was always in the front row of every school performance and game. Whenever I wake up in the middle of the night and miss Dad, I'll call Uncle David and he'll always pick up. My mom eventually remarried Bob. I never liked Bob because he always had to be in control and placed us on a strict schedule. Dinner was at 7 every day, no matter what. If we came home late and dinner was over, we didn't get to eat that night. Whenever our uncles gave me and sister money, we had to give it to Bob and he divided the money equally. A couple of months ago, sister and I were eating with Uncle David and his family. Our dinner conversation eventually led to where I want to go for college and how to pay for it. Uncle David told me that the uncles decided long ago that they were going to pay for me and sister's tuition and cost of living on campus. I cried when I heard that and laughed when he jokingly said, "I hope you don't get into medical school because that would cost me a fortune." I went home and excitedly told Mom and Bob that the uncles are going to pay for our colleges. Instead of being happy, they both looked furious, and Bob started screaming about how unfair it was to our step-siblings and half-sister that we're getting a free ride through college. He wanted me to tell our uncles to divide the college funds equally among the kids, but I refused. The next day, he kept on screaming, so sister and I packed our bags to go to Uncle David's house. He kept screaming and even followed us out to my car. Sister and I have been living with Uncle David and his family ever since. This feels more like home than it ever did at our house. Mom has been asking us to come home for Christmas for a month now, and I've been refusing. Today is the 24th, and she's been calling all morning crying and saying how we need to spend Christmas with family. Am I wrong for not spending Christmas with my mom? Not the jerk. Bob's kids are not entitled to what your uncles have. They aren't blood relatives. I'm going to assume your uncles are the brothers of your father. You did the right thing. You and your sister were subjected to this jerk who didn't really care about you and is more interested in giving what you have to his kids. Your mother let it happen. Stay at your uncle's. They've been there for you all of your lives, and it's clear they love you guys so much. Your mother sounds like when she married Bob, she chose her new family over the one she already had. Well, what do you think? Should OP spend Christmas with her mom or not? Please let us know.
Someone on Reddit discovered that OP's mom wrote the story from her point of view about a month ago. Let's read that one next.
Am I the jerk for telling my husband I'm not going to tell my ex-brother-in-laws to stop spoiling our daughters? My ex and I, 44 female, divorced when our daughters, Stacy, 17 female, and Emily, 14, were young. About a year after the divorce, he passed away. My ex was paying child support, but that stopped the day that he passed. The girls inherited their father's estate, but since he was fresh into his career, it wasn't much. Things could have been rough as a single mother, but his brothers stepped into his shoes. They took the girls on the weekends and basically bought the girls anything they needed, from clothing to school supplies, and bought our groceries. They also indulged the girls' every whim. Stacy loved horses when she was little, so Uncle John paid for her lessons and riding fees. Emily thought she wanted to play the piano, so Uncle Jeff paid for her lessons and bought her a piano. When the girls grew out of those phases and got interested in something else, their uncles were there ready to indulge them. I tried talking to the uncles about not spoiling them, but they said that their nieces needed to explore their own interests, and those explorations will help their brain developments. I disagree, but was not in a financial situation to push too hard because they were paying so much for the girls. I was basically responsible for only the rent. I later remarried a wonderful man who brought 2 kids into the family. We had one more kid together, and things are good for the most part. However, kids are smart, so my daughter's step and half-siblings started to notice their sisters having more experiences and things than they do. My husband didn't like the situation, and we had some arguments about it over the years. Things came to a boiling point recently when we were discussing how to pay for our 2 oldest kids' college, Stacy and her stepbrother Rick, who's 18, male. Both are good students, and while they haven't gotten their acceptance letters, I have no doubt they'll get into good schools. My husband and I make enough money to live a middle-class lifestyle with 5 kids, but not enough to put them through college. The reality is that they'll have to take out school loans. We talked to both of them about loans, and this is when I found out Stacy had already talked to her uncles, and they're paying for her tuition and cost of living wherever she wants to go. This floored us and made my husband extremely mad. He got red in the face and started to scream how it's not fair Stacy and Emily will get to go to expensive colleges and graduate with no loans, while our other kids will have to go to state schools and take out loans. He wanted me to call John and Jeff and tell them to stop spoiling the girls. On one hand, I agree 100% with my husband that it's not fair to my other kids, but on the other hand, I can't hold my daughters back from something so wonderful. In the end, I told my husband I'm not going to tell my ex-brother-in-laws to stop spoiling our daughters. Was I wrong to tell him that? Update. Thank you all for reading my post and answering my question. Things have gone downhill and now I'm crushed. I was at work, and without my knowledge, my husband called John and yelled at him to mind his own business, told him we don't want their money and to stay out of our lives. My husband then went and yelled at the girls as they packed their bags and as they were leaving for their uncles. When I got home, my husband wanted to call the police to report them as runaways, but I talked him out of it. I went over to John's house, and his wife led me to the kitchen where we stood in silence, watching John holding them while they cried. For a minute, I pictured their father holding them. Stacy and Emily refused to talk to me when they walked past me on their way upstairs to their room. John and I had a long conversation about the whole situation. He basically told me he's doing what his brother couldn't, and both me and my husband can buzz off if we don't like it. He said the girls should stay with him and his family until things calm down, and I agreed. So this is where we are now. Also, to answer some common questions. 1. My husband makes less money than I do, so he's been unable to save up college tuition. 2. His ex is still in the picture and has visitation rights. She makes less money than him, so they have nothing saved up, much less tuition. Not the jerk. Your daughters shouldn't miss out from their paternal relatives just because your husband and the other kids might be super jealous. Those other kids have something your oldest don't, their dad. You'd be a gigantic jerk if you were anything besides grateful for the generosity of your former husband's brothers towards your oldest kids. Edit. Regarding the update, that is horrible, OP. You might want to reconsider being married to such a selfish man. He doesn't sound wonderful like your original post portrayed him prior to the update. I hope you and your oldest daughter are in a good place already or very soon. Keep on supporting their dreams. Your daughters will never ever forgive you if you sabotage their chance to graduate without debt, nor should they. That would be an incredibly cruel and spiteful thing to do to them. And ironically, your husband's bitterness is making him short-sighted about the other kids' well-being. Having your girls' uncles assume the financial burden for their living expenses will free you up to help with the other kids where you can. Finally, is it normal for your husband to get red-faced and scream about financial stress or the realities of a blended family? The substance of his demands, that you sabotage your kids' opportunities, is unacceptable itself, but the way he's expressing himself is also creating an atmosphere of fear and distrust. Personally, I wouldn't consider him a wonderful man until he agrees to therapy to figure out how to cope with his frustrations. Am I the jerk for overruling my wife on a matter concerning our daughter? I, 42 male, and my wife, 38 female, have a daughter who's 14. She's friends with the son, who is 13, of an acquaintance of mine. Because my daughter and her friend are different genders, my wife insists on always supervising their playdates. Our daughter can't go to his house, he has to come here. She always watches the kids when they're together and doesn't let them close the door when they're in her room. To be honest, I always thought my wife was being fairly reasonable until this incident. Kids are kids, and they're nearing the complicated age, so I always backed my wife up even when my daughter begged to be allowed to go to her friend's house. Recently, my wife was watching the kids while I was at work and realized she needed some things from the store. She made the kids go with her so they wouldn't be alone. Apparently, I'm obviously getting all of this info secondhand, the kids wandered off while she was shopping. While they were alone, an employee approached my daughter's friend and accused him of stealing something. My daughter's friend turned out his jacket pockets, and there was nothing in there but his phone and keys. The employee demanded that he remove his jacket because she thought something was hidden under the jacket. My daughter's friend refused and said he didn't steal anything. My daughter called for my wife, and she showed up pretty quickly. My wife sided with the employee and asked my daughter's friend to remove the jacket. When he did, the employee saw the necklace he was wearing and demanded he take it off so she could inspect it to see if it was merchandise from the store. I've seen him wearing this necklace before, for the record. At this point, he ran out of the store into the cold, not wearing a jacket, and called his grandfather to come pick him up. I was at work when my acquaintance called me, furious. He said his son was half frozen when his dad got to him, which I believe because it's very cold here right now, and that my wife had profiled him. He told me that his son won't be going over to my house ever again. Edit. My daughter wants me to add this. She, unlike me, knows how to use Reddit properly and edit posts. Her friend is mixed. A lot of people asked and I didn't know, so hopefully they see this. Edit 2. My wife texted me that there was an emergency and I needed to call her, so I stepped out of the theater and did so. Guess what? No emergency. No surprise either. She told me I had no right to separate her from her daughter on Christmas. I said it was her choice and confronted her about what my daughter said at breakfast, especially about the food thing. She started crying and said I had no idea what that boy put her through. I hung up. Forget this. It's Christmas. I'm watching Home Alone with my daughter. Edit 3. My daughter said this comment needs to be in the post itself. Yeah, the paying attention to the movie didn't last. She's become really intrigued by all these comments and has been on my phone for the last 20 minutes. I'm pasting it in. She showed me how. So my daughter and I are at the movies right now. After breakfast, she said she didn't want to go home, so we're going to the Christmas movie marathon at the local theater. She went to get snacks. I gave her $30 so she could come back with a small tub of popcorn. Darn these concession prices. So I'm going to tell you guys some of what happened at breakfast. It was a lot, so apologies if some stuff seems rushed over. Ask for clarification if you'd like. My wife is blowing up my phone right now, but I don't want to talk to her. This wasn't the first time something like this happened, just the first time it happened in public. Here's some of the things my daughter told me my wife did that they kept quiet about for fear of not being allowed to hang out anymore. I know, I'm a jerk. I understand that. My wife screamed at this kid for giving my daughter a gymnastics lesson. He's on a gymnastics team. They weren't doing anything dangerous. She made them stop and called him names. She screamed at them for playing with makeup. It belonged to my daughter and was a gift from my sister. I don't think it was expensive stuff. Even if it was, who cares? She made him wash his face and go home. He told his grandfather he had a stomachache that day apparently. She told him he eats too much food at our house. This is the worst one for me. I was mad when she told me that. So yeah, learned some stuff about my wife. It's clear to me now that I haven't been an active member of my marriage in a long time. This was hard to learn. The hardest part was knowing that my daughter didn't trust me with any of this because she assumed I would side with her mom. Edit 4. I asked my daughter to stop reading the stuff on this post. Obviously, now that she's seen it, she can go on Reddit on her own phone and find it again. But trust has to start somewhere, right? We gave up on the Christmas marathon. We're both too upset to sit still and watch a movie. I took her to my sister's and then went home to talk to my wife. I needed to get some things straightened out with her before I took my daughter home. It didn't go well. My wife apologized when I got home. She was crying. She said the holidays were so stressful and that she had a bit of a breakdown. She begged me to get our daughter and bring her home. I said I would once we talked. She kept sobbing, so I went and got her some water. I said we could talk or I could leave, but I wasn't going to get our daughter until we talked. Eventually, she stopped crying and talked to me. I told her I want to go to family therapy, and she agreed. I'm sitting in the living room now, calming down before I go back to my sister's to get my daughter. That was extremely emotionally draining. What a way to spend Christmas morning. Not the jerk, but you still have some work to do. Firstly, you're absolutely right that your daughter should be allowed to visit her friend. If his grandfather is there, that sorts out the adult supervision line your wife is worried about. So all told, you're making a reasonable adjustment based on her wishes. Her failure to compromise isn't your fault. However, I think you already know that your wife is not setting a healthy example for your daughter at all. You said your daughter defended her friend. Good, that sort of prejudice needs to be called out. However, the enforced supervision, the "you know what teens are like," is another matter. As others have said, this will only lead to resentment and mistakes. Far better that you ensure your daughter understands being safe and, more importantly, feels empowered to set her own boundaries and make her own decisions. Constant supervision on its own is authoritarian and doesn't work. You say you want to talk to your daughter about all this. Good. Make sure she knows that you trust her and she can come to you for advice, but that you're there to support her making the right decisions, not trying to make them for her. I'm not saying let her do whatever she wants. She's still only 13. But make sure she knows you respect her independence to make some choices of her own and that you'll still love and support her. I'm not saying you don't do any of these things at all, but make sure she knows, because from the sounds of it, currently your wife seems to be the leader on these issues and she is not setting a good example. Sister demands that I give her one of my twin babies and my mother backs her up. So I, 27 female, am an identical twin. Now there's this idea that twins, especially identical twins, have an automatic connection. Well, this is not true with us. Mostly because we grew up in different homes. At 13, our parents split, and I chose to live with my dad, and she chose to live with our mother. And she ended up taking on my mother's "I'm better than everyone else, and the world should bow down to me" attitude. This attitude is a huge reason I chose to live with my dad. My mother cared a lot about appearance and what people thought, and because I wasn't a perfect kid, she treated me horribly. Well, my sister was her perfect girl, and pretty much her personal mini-me. I wasn't. First, I went through a punk/tomboy phase through middle school and into high school, which I still somewhat incorporate into my style and personality today. My sister was also pretty popular throughout high school. She had a lot of friends, and well, I had 3 friends. And guess what? I was considered a nerd. After our parents split, I would spend every first weekend with my mother and my sister spent every second weekend with me and my dad. I stopped going to my mother's house when I was 15. I had started dating another girl from school. My mother accused me of just looking for attention. My relationship with her became strained after that. Well, flash forward 7 years to when my sister and I were 22. My sister and her boyfriend were trying to have a baby, but they couldn't seem to get pregnant. After a year of trying, they found out that she's not physically able to have kids. Well, I felt bad for her, but I didn't think much of it as I thought there was nothing I could do to help. Turns out my sister and mother thought differently. We were all at my aunt's house for her birthday when my sister and mother pulled me aside. Mother:
So, you know about your sister's doctor visit?
Me: Yeah, I'm so sorry. I know how much you wanted it. Mother:
Well, we actually figured out a way that she can have a baby.
Me: Is she going to adopt? Sister:
No, we can't do that. It costs too much.
Oh, well then what's your plan? Mother:
I remembered something I saw online a while back, so I looked it up. And since you two are twins, if you have a baby, She will be just as biologically related to it as if she had one herself. Me.
Wait, you want me to get pregnant and carry the baby?
Yes, it's a perfect situation.
Me. That is not happening.
OP, she is your sister, and you can help her. Stop being so selfish.
Me. I'm not being selfish. Getting pregnant is a big deal, and it will take literally 9 months of my life. I have a job. I had also just started a new relationship with a guy, and getting pregnant would likely have made things awkward. And last but not least, I just didn't want to be pregnant. They started going in on me, on how I need to help my sister and trying to guilt trip me into doing it. I wasn't taking it and made it clear that it wasn't going to happen. I thought that was the end, but then a year later, despite all attempts to prevent it from happening, I got pregnant. My boyfriend at the time, who I had only been dating for a year, and I wasn't sure what to do. We talked about it and all the options, but we decided to go through with the pregnancy. I kept my pregnancy secret for as long as I could, but once I started showing, I announced it online, which resulted in a call from my sister. Sister.
So, you're pregnant?
Me. Yeah.
What happened to not wanting kids?
Well, accidents happen, I guess.
So, since you never wanted a kid, you could let us adopt it.
Me. What?
Well, you always said you never wanted kids, and this one was an accident, so you should let us adopt it.
No, not happening. This is me and my boyfriend's baby, and we're going to raise it.
But you said you didn't want kids.
Well, I changed my mind. It happens.
That's not fair.
I hung up on her after that. I wasn't in any mood to fight. She then tried to get my mom to guilt trip me into giving her the baby. And despite my reminder that even if I didn't want the baby, I couldn't just give it to them, as my boyfriend was the father and he had rights to the kid. They didn't seem to understand. Now, if you thought it ended there, nope. Well, when we went in for a checkup, I found out that I was having twins, which in a way wasn't a big surprise, since being a twin myself gave me a higher chance at having them. I took a while to come to terms with having one baby, so finding out I was going to have two was a huge shock. I was still pretty freaked out about having twins, but decided to announce it, which resulted in another call from my sister.
You're having twins?
Yeah, apparently. Ironic, right?
So, can I have one?
What?
Since you're having twins, I can have one.
No, you can't.
Why not? You have two.
Yeah, I am having two. They are my babies, and me and my boyfriend will be raising both.
But that's not fair.
I hung up again as I wasn't going to fight her. But then my mother calls me, and this is the conversation. Mother.
Your sister just called me crying.
Okay.
Can't you just give her one of them? You know how much she wants a baby.
Me. That's not my problem. These are my kids. She can always adopt. There are plenty of kids looking for homes.
OP, why do you always have to be so difficult and selfish? You never even wanted these kids in the first place. Would it hurt you to give one to your sister?
Me. This is ridiculous. She's not getting either of my babies. After some more attempting at guilt-tripping me, they finally stopped demanding I give them a baby. But that didn't stop them from overstepping with the kids on multiple occasions. Context. It's been a few years now, and the boys are about to turn 5. Over the last few years, I had to fight with my mother and sister about some weird and honestly disrespectful stuff that they've done. Maybe I'll share more of these stories here too. Depends on if anyone in my family finds this one or not. Edit. I should have added this in the beginning. I have low to no contact with my sister and mother as of now. I live very far from them. Our contact is purely social media. Facebook. Am I the jerk for leaving my husband for a Christmas trip to Hawaii with our kids? Every year, my family spends our Christmas in Hawaii. We've done it every year since I can remember, and it's a fun family tradition for me. After me and my husband had kids, we had to reorganize our family Christmas plans because his parents wanted to see our kids for Christmas. So we decided that we would celebrate Christmas with his parents on New Year's and go to Hawaii for actual Christmas. This is the system that worked for us until last year. Last year, his dad passed around this time of the year, and it hit him and his mom hard. For obvious reasons, we didn't go to Hawaii. This year, we planned out what we'd do for the holidays early. We'd do Thanksgiving with his mom, and we'd do Christmas in Hawaii, since me and the kids missed out last year. Things were going well until right before our flight. About a week out, he said he was unsure. He said that he thinks it might be better that we stay. He said he really wanted to spend Christmas with his family, and felt like his mom really needed it. I was unhappy about this. We made a plan, we saw her last month, and we already had my dad buy our tickets and hotel, so it would be incredibly unfair to me, him, and our kids for us to just not go for his mom, who we'd see again in a few days after we got back anyways. We got into an argument about it and proposed that me and the kids can go to Hawaii and he can stay there with his mom. He decided to do this, but he was very clearly upset that I wasn't going to forego my family's Christmas tradition and seeing my family just for his mom. So now I'm in Hawaii, watching and wrangling the kids by myself, while he's home alone. He hasn't texted me or responded to me much. When I call him, he only talks for about 3 minutes before wanting to get off the phone with me and talk to the girls. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk, because you stayed home the first year after his dad passed, and you had agreed to the Thanksgiving and Christmas arrangement for this year. He changed his mind after all the arrangements were made. However, I think you and your husband need to talk about this more. Where are he and his mom in their grieving processes? How does he envision things working in future years? Does he want every Christmas with his mom now? Does he want to do alternate Christmases? Or is this year just particularly hard for both of them? Also, is there an option to have your mother-in-law join you in Hawaii since she's on her own? No jerks here. I feel for your husband. He lost his dad a year ago and his mom is spending Christmas without her partner. With plane tickets bought and hotels arranged, a week out is not enough time to change plans. I agree with you about not wanting to cancel and taking the kids to see your family. I do think you need to cut him some slack here though. The holidays can be really hard for people who have lost loved ones recently. I think you're all doing your best in this situation, and I don't think there is any right answer here. Hopefully, your husband can join you next year, and maybe you could have a conversation about that when you get back. Info: why not just bring his mom to Hawaii? OP doesn't pay for it. Yes, it would be rude to ask her parents to cover mother-in-law. OP and her husband should have covered the cost for mother-in-law to go to Hawaii with them. Maybe they aren't financially comfortable enough to do so. Maybe, but a family that can afford an annual trip to Hawaii sounds like there's enough lying around for one extra domestic plane ticket. Or split it. Mother-in-law may have financial ability. Moreover, Christmas at home generally will cost half of an airline ticket anyway. There's accommodation already paid for on the other side. You're the jerk for this. After me and my husband had kids, we had to reorganize our family Christmas plans because his parents wanted to see our kids for Christmas, so we decided that we would celebrate Christmas with his parents on New Year's and go to Hawaii for actual Christmas. What part exactly did you reorganize? You still kept going to Hawaii every year. It was your husband's parents who changed their Christmas celebration to New Year. Obviously, husband shouldn't have waited till after the tickets were bought before voicing his concerns, but it really doesn't sound like it would have made a difference. You make it sound like your father-in-law passing away last year was just an inconvenience that kept you from going to your trip, and you're failing to show your husband any empathy. You're just thinking about yourself. You're the jerk. I'm honestly shocked that you guys would even plan for Hawaii this year. How much of this was his idea and not just your urging? He didn't lose his dad months before Christmas last year. He basically lost him and laid him to rest during Christmas. And it didn't occur that this year may be hard for him and his mother? That he might not be in an aloha spirit? That his mom might not want her son and grandbabies to be gone while she mourns for her husband? You do Hawaii every year. This is the first. I don't care how hard you argue that it's his second and that he should be fine. Holiday season without his dad. It's the anniversary of his dad passing. You were wrong for even booking the tickets and not saying, "Hey honey, this could be a tough one. Let's just spend Christmas at home with your mom and maybe we can all do Hawaii next year." Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know. My brother is accusing me of ruining Christmas after I told his wife the truth about a family name. I can't figure out if I did anything wrong, or if so, what, because I honestly have no idea what's going on. Hopefully someone here can give me a clue. Here's the relevant info as far as I know. My brother and his wife are expecting their first girl after 2 boys. I love Ricky and Jace, and so does my sister-in-law, but she has always wanted a girl and is very excited to be having one. She also wants to name the girl Chloe, as she loves that name. My brother hates the name Chloe and really wants to name their daughter Stephanie. They've been arguing about it for a few weeks since finding out the gender. I got to my parents' house late last night, and my sister-in-law was the only person still awake. We talked for a little bit, and she asked me the weirdest question. She asked me if I knew any stories about Great Aunt Stephanie. I was so confused. I literally said, "Who?" Sister-in-law clarified that she was talking about our grandmother's older sister that passed when Grandma was still little. Our grandma had 2 sisters, but their names were Judy and Lynn. There's no one in our family named Stephanie, as far as I know. I told as much to my sister-in-law, and she changed the subject after that, and we soon went to bed. This morning, my brother and his wife were both sulking during breakfast. Even the kids could tell. Ricky kept saying, "Stop being grumpy on Christmas." So it wasn't just my imagination. I got my brother alone and confronted him. He snapped at me for meddling and told me to stay out of his marriage. My brother is upset at me, and my sister-in-law won't even talk to me. I'm afraid to say anything to my parents and drag them into this, especially since I still don't know what this is. Either my grandmother had a secret sister that I don't know about, but my brother does for some reason, or my brother lied to his wife to convince her to name their baby Stephanie. Both options seem equally weird to me. Maybe there's a third possibility I'm not seeing. Reddit, am I the jerk? If so, please explain to me why. I don't want to be the reason Christmas is ruined. Update. Most awkward Christmas Eve dinner ever. Gotta keep this short, a lot going on. Everyone now knows what my brother was doing and the kids' names, except the kids obviously. They are upset. Weirdly, my mom is the most upset. A Christmas truce is in place for the kids, so no fighting on the holiday. However, the baby is definitely going to be named Chloe. My brother very quickly backed down when my mom said some few choice words to him. The topic is completely banned for the rest of festivities, so for now at least, they've tied a bow on the situation. Christmas morning update. Aside from some glaring over a couple of the boys' stocking stuffers, Robin Funko Pops, everything went well with the gift opening, as well as being woken up at 5:30 a.m. by being jumped on by one nephew's can. I think my brother realizes he crossed a line and has been very attentive to his wife. He mentioned getting Chloe's name embroidered on some stuff when they get home. He even told Mom he would do the Christmas breakfast so she could have a break, and he gave me an "I'm sorry" grin when I opened his gift. I think everything is going to be fine. Not the jerk. You cannot be expected to maintain lies you are not aware of, if you even view maintaining convenient lies as one of your duties in the first place. Way too many of these questions are because some relative refused to lie to another relative or just didn't know that a lie exists. Not the jerk. I don't know why your sister-in-law is not talking to you. She asked a question and you answered honestly. And your brother either lied to you or lied to her. He's the jerk here. You didn't meddle. You brought the conversation up organically. Complain to whomever I want? You bet. The last school year has been challenging for me at work. I'm an English high school teacher, not in the US, and the work environment at that school has been going from bad to worse as the school year progressed. Our principal has created a very hostile and toxic work and learning environment that has made many young teachers leave, even at the start and middle of the year. Very uncommon in my country. I, 32, male, and many of the other teachers have felt bullied and oppressed. Our complaints went unheard and ridiculed, with the principal targeting many of us, young and experienced teachers alike, for public shaming sessions. And my turn came last week. I asked for a meeting with her to discuss my desire to go back to university next year to complete my thesis, which would have resulted in me taking Tuesdays off. All teachers in my country get a day off, which is usually for us to choose. As soon as I walked in, she called one of the administrators, and they both started a 30-minute shaming session. I was told that I'm a lousy teacher, my classes are boring, they never attended any of my classes, that I've conspired to ruin English teaching at our school, and that students, parents, other teachers, and administrators have been complaining about me. She wants teachers to work full-time, which she knows I planned on doing anyway, and have been asking for it for 2 years, and advised me to take a break from teaching. Unpaid leave. I was shocked and speechless. In my 3 years at that school, I received only praise from everyone I worked with. My students, their parents, and colleagues love me, to which I have written proof. The following day, I went ahead and turned in my notice. She called me a liar. I told other teachers what happened as they saw me coming out pale and on the verge of tears out of her office, and said that I couldn't take criticism. She has also started lying about me to her colleagues and other school principals. They all know me and told me. She also told me to complain to whomever I want. Cue malicious compliance. Following excellent advice I got on Am I the Jerk, I waited to file the complaint until I secured a new position. However, I decided to follow that last bit of advice from her. I sent it to whomever I thought might be interested, the Regional General Inspectorate, the Teachers Union, and other officials, an inspector I knew in my country's Ministry of Education, and the best part, every teaching college and program in a 200-kilometer radius, which included the most prominent and largest education programs in my country and area. Fallout. The principal had to beg the ministry to send them new teachers, as quite a few of us left at the end of last year. Most of the poor English teachers she did get contacted me via mutual friends and colleagues, asking me for help getting new positions as the work environment has only gotten worse, a request to which I gladly obliged. The complaint itself didn't impact the principal professionally, but she will have a pretty difficult time filling positions for the next few years. A few colleagues from that school will join me next year, as they kept calling me to vent about the worsening conditions there, so I just told them to send me their CVs, which my coordinator was more than happy to receive. As for me, I found a wonderful school outside of my city where I could rediscover my love of teaching. Not only have I found a place where I feel good, but I also found a second job. I now teach at my local college, where the hourly rate is 5 times my school salary. I've also found the courage to start something I always wanted to do, move to another country, which I'm on track to do in 2024. Was I wrong to file a police report on my neighbor? Tonight, a bunch of my neighbors called me out to tell me that my car had been sideswiped, along with another car in front of me. They saw the car leave. I thought I had no other option than to call it into my own insurance in the morning. Then some other neighbors came out and pointed at another car down the street parked in front of a neighbor. They said it was that car that hit mine. I walk down there and there's a party on the front lawn. I see the car and the damage to the front, and I ask them who the car belongs to and if they saw the accident. They all said no. It was apparently really loud and the whole street heard it happen. Then as I'm inspecting the damaged car, the neighbor finally comes out and says, "We will take care of it." And I was like, "Take care of what?" He said it was his car, and I asked who was driving and if I could talk to whoever was driving. He said the guy wasn't there and proceeded to say he'll come see me in the morning and take care of it. I said fine and walked back, but my neighbors were still congregating and said I needed to file a police report if I can't get any information from the guy. I went back and talked to the guy and explained I really need the info, or at least to meet the guy that was driving, or I need to file a report, and I really didn't want to do that, but I needed something. He kept saying I should trust him, and I told him it's not that I don't want to trust him, but it also doesn't help that he denied it when I initially asked and only came forward when I found his car. I said I wasn't angry, I just wanted to know what had happened. He said it was some young guys in the house, but he didn't want to go interrogate. I ended up calling the police to file a report, and he and his wife came out when the police came and said it was his wife that was driving and didn't want to confess because she was scared. I felt so terrible for calling the cops because I see this neighbor all the time. We don't speak, but we do say hi. I told my father afterward, and he said I did the right thing because they could deny it in the morning, or the suspect car could be gone. He said if they were honest people, they should have confessed in the beginning when he saw people coming out of their house to see what had happened. Also turns out the car in front of mine that got damaged belonged to one of their guests. Mine has door damage and a missing mirror, but theirs was in the back corner and wheel, and it seemed like it would be a totaled car. But I still feel guilty. Did I jump the gun by filing a police report? Not the jerk. They were messing you around, hoping you'd just go away and foot the bill for their DUI. Forget that. Calling the police was the right thing to do. Absolutely. I mean, come on, she was scared? Of course you're scared when you sideswipe somebody, but you're a grown adult. You did significant damage in front of an entire street of your neighbors. You don't hide and pretend like nothing happened. You're not 13. You know better than that. And an entire party and her husband playing along and denying it like this is high school and you're trying to make up a fake story for the principal. OP, do not feel bad because they're your neighbors and you see them all the time. You are their neighbor and they were willing to sideswipe your car, not say anything to you, and then lie to your face when confronted. Don't waste mental energy having more regard for them than they have for you. Come on, sideswiping 2 cars on a residential street and doing so much damage, one of them could have been described as totaled. That's either drunk or texting. Either way, it's careless driving. What if a kid had been playing? And it's not like you went over there just to shame her. You went over there and called the cops to make sure you were covered for the damage she did. If she feels ashamed, which she should, that's just a byproduct of having made a huge mistake. How I got our workshop repaired, and revenge on my manager. So I know what people are going to say. If it was dangerous, why not just report it to health and safety? And my answer to that is that I am as thick as mints. Plus, I've seen how they butchered the workshop of another department, putting insane safety measures in place that do little to actually protect people and mostly just get in the way. The safety person is only technically qualified, meaning they're office workers that went on a course about it once. Go figure. So the situation was, I was working in a machining workshop, mill, lathe, surface grinder, etc. And it's old and worn out. Everything needs maintenance, but either management don't give us the time, it needs new parts that management won't buy, or it needs a proper service from a professional that management won't get in. Then someone in health and safety asks about safety checks, which the manager in charge sheepishly mentions there are none. Officially at least. We have the sense to do them anyway. And so weekly safety checks are put in place. More paperwork. Ooh, but I don't mind. Knowing this manager, he expects them done like all other safety checks in the factory. Unless it's going to hurt someone, sign to say it's okay anyway, and let him know so it can be fixed later. That way the machines don't get stopped constantly. But I realize the potential. Want me to do the checks? Sure, I'll do the checks perfectly. Spindle brake on the lathe is worn out? Fail, locked off. Nobody can use it until it's fixed. No emergency stop on the big drill? Fail, locked off. Nobody can use it. Plastic housing for the wiring on the mill is broken? Fail, locked off. Nobody can use it, etc., etc. Safe to say, he wasn't happy. But what can he do? It's all recorded on paper, and machines in the factory are stopping because they need parts making. Then came the big one. For a while, we've noticed machines getting damaged overnight. Night shift. But we weren't sure how. All the machines are on key locks, and we have the only keys. I came back after break one day and find a machine operator turning on a bench grinder to sharpen a knife. Cue some colorful words about what he thinks he's doing, why it's wrong, what I'll do to him if he does it again, and I ask how he turned it on. Turns out, someone from night shift told him the lock is old and worn out, and basically any similar key will work just fine, no matter what the bidding. So I go around to check, and sure enough, my locker key, the kind everyone in the factory has, turns on every machine. Some even worked with a screwdriver or just using the back of another key because there was no lock left inside. Fail, 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 fail. Everything fails. Whole workshop stopped. If this was a cartoon, the manager's ears would be leaking steam by now. He insists that this doesn't count as a fail because reasons. Then that these locks with keys that control power aren't keyed interlocks, and so I don't need to check them before finally just insisting it's okay and I should pass it because he says so. Sure, I said. Just put it in writing that it's you saying it's okay, not me. Sure backed down quick then. A day or so later, new locks turned up and were fitted, and the problem of overnight broken equipment went away. In the end, the manager got an earful from his bosses about production delays and another from health and safety when they found out these issues had been reported for a long time without anything done about them. In all though, he got away pretty clean, besides the bruised ego. And that's how the workshop went from old, crappy, and dangerous to just old and slightly less crappy. Oh, I'll just hold on to it. Leave it, it's fine. Not sure how many of you folks have dogs, specifically male dogs, but for anyone who doesn't, pro tip, anything upright and stationary can and will be peed on. Fire hydrants? Of course. Signs? Absolutely. Plants? You bet. Innocent bystanders who haven't moved recently. Oops. I swear that's only happened twice. One fine day about 2 years or so ago, my pupper and I were at the dog park, doing dog park things. I throw the ball, he chases it down. Sometimes he'll bring it back, sometimes he'll leave it random places. Sometimes he'll bring it to a random stranger in the park and look at them like they're soft, until they figure out he wants them to throw the ball. The entire time this is happening, the whole park is getting all the emails replied to, one spritz at a time. This particular time, we had the entire dog park to ourselves for a little while, and these two ladies come in with super cute beagle puppies. One woman sensibly didn't bring a bag with her into the park. She had pockets. The other lady had a very big bag, and it looked like it cost about as much as a used car. This was the kind where she'll get scoliosis from carting the thing around, but it's large enough to fit actual Karen appliances. So these two ladies are standing there talking to each other and monitoring their puppies, which is good. I've more or less dissolved into a puddle of aw, and my dog makes friends because at that time in his life, he'd still play with other dogs. Then I noticed the woman with the bag has put her bag on the ground, which is the thing you do when you've probably got a car battery crammed in there with all the other stuff ladies need to carry when they're not permitted pockets by the cruel gods of fashion. I noticed this and figure she's new. Once I've recollected myself from puddle form, I wait for an opportune moment and toss out an, "Excuse me, I hate to interrupt, but I just wanted to let you know that having your bag on the ground is a bad idea at the dog park. I've seen others hang it on the chain link fence," and I point at the fence that encloses the dog park. Not like there weren't over 9,000 available hangers for her bag. They both look at me in mild shock. Apparently, they hadn't noticed me gushing all over their cute puppies. Then they caught on to what I was saying, and the sensible lady looks at her friend and rolls her eyes, while the bag lady comes back with, "Oh, I'll just hold on to it," and picks up the bagzilla and slings it back over her shoulder. I shrug and buzz off, which was not a stated request, but was implied. Within 5 minutes, the doom bag is back on the ground, and I meander over because I see my dog go into a target lock mode. The stream is imminent. I attempt to give the woman a heads up and make it as far as, Bag lady looks at me and just snaps,
Leave it. It'll be fine.
I give her a shrug and mosey over to somewhere clear of the blast radius. Not only does my dog have target lock, he's also parked himself uphill from the bag's impact crater. His leg lifts, and it's no spritz going into, not onto, her bag. It's a full stream. Realizing the most likely reaction from bag lady is a designer boot to somewhere, I shout, "Dexter, no!" at max volume and get the desired result. He looks at me and then doesn't escape and evades because he's a jerk like that sometimes. Both ladies look at me, then at the bag, and then at the dog. Sensible lady is fighting back tears while bag lady works herself up into a frenzy. "How dare my filthy animal urinate on her valuable stuff? Don't I have him trained? Blah blah blah." She scruffs her puppy and holds him in her arms while maintaining a constant stream of castigation at me. It was honestly kind of impressive. Keeps shouting at me all the way over to her car, throws the puppy in, hope he's okay, and burns rubber leaving the park. Other lady bursts out laughing once the car is out of line of sight. She wheezes, "At least you tried." "How dare you stand near me?" I work as a self-checkout clerk. It's my job to stand near the registers and make sure people don't steal stuff, and make sure any issues they have with our point-of-sale system get smoothed over. Because of what's going on, I also sanitize these registers. Late last night, I was doing just that when two women came up to the register I was trying to clean. I moved off a bit until I noticed that the receipt wasn't printing after she put in her money and went over to investigate. It said she still had $1.14 left to pay. She asked me why it wasn't printing, and I told her that before moving away. I stayed nearby because I still needed to clean the register.
Are you staying here to make sure I don't steal $1.14?
No, I just wanted to sanitize the register because sometimes people are gross. Since it's what I have to do next, I just want to stick around.
You know we come through self-checkout to avoid people.
I internally rolled my eyes. She paid and she left without her friend. Her friend had grabbed some food from the deli and decided she didn't want it. So I handed it off to another associate to return and went back to monitoring the area. A woman needed help scanning produce because it can be a pain in the butt on our system, stuff like that. I go back to the register I saw her at to get back my cleaner and paper towels and notice that there are still 2 items on the belt that haven't been scanned. "Oh, are you going to pay for those in a separate transaction, or do you not want them?"
Well, I was going to pay for them in a separate transaction, but since you've been harassing me all night, I don't want them anymore.
"Ma'am, I'm sorry. That wasn't my intention. I was just trying to clean."
You've been acting like I was planning on stealing these. I'm going to call and make sure your manager hears about this tomorrow.
She picked up the 2 things that were still on the belt and threw them at me. Not very hard, and they were light, but it surprised me. "Ma'am, I'm so sorry. If you want to talk with—"
Now you're trying to embarrass me in front of everyone to keep me from telling him what you did.
"I'm just trying to understand what I did so that I don't do it again." She grabbed the things she did pay for and left me with the super glue and electrical tape. My cousin is pregnant and none of us are happy about it. I'm 31, female, and my younger cousin, who's 28, recently found out that she's pregnant. She's really excited, but she found out that she's having triplets. The dad, who's 45, is a real piece of work and he won't even be in the picture, and he can't offer financial support either. She doesn't make very much money and she has no savings. I myself have 2 kids, and even with the financial and emotional support of my partner, it can be very stressful. Over the past few weeks, I've gently tried to tell her that it may not be a green pasture ahead. She doesn't even have a functional car right now. It's like her head is stuck in the sand and she's only talking about how amazing it will be, how blessed she is, how it's a miracle, how she'll just figure it out. On Christmas Eve, she surprised the rest of the family with the news after doing a big surprise scavenger hunt that led to 3 onesies. Her mom already knew, but she told grandparents, cousins, aunts, uncles, etc. She didn't get the reaction that she was hoping for. Some people told her she should consider her options. Some talked to her about how hard this will be, asked about how she will afford this, wanted to know what support the dad would be giving, etc. It was not very celebratory. I could tell she was upset and she left early. I went to talk to her this morning in her studio apartment. I told her I was sorry for everyone's reaction, but that I could see where the family was coming from and that they just wanted what was best for her and were concerned. I asked her what she expected the reaction to be, and she told me she thought everyone would rally together to help her now and to offer a bunch of help once the babies arrived. She expected financial support too. I told her that she can't rely on others like that, and she will likely have to figure a lot of this out on her own if she goes through with it. She told me that I'm horrible, that our family is terrible, and that we all deserve each other, and that unless she gets our support, she'll cut us all out. Then she told me to leave. In some ways, I think it's a reality check, but the more I think about it, I also know how overwhelming it is to be pregnant, and I'm sorry that she didn't get any happy reactions or offers of support. Especially because in the past, other family members have gotten very happy family reactions when sharing their pregnancies. Am I the jerk for agreeing with the rest of our family? You're the jerk, and most of your family is too. She's obviously happy about the pregnancy and wants those kids. Suggesting considering her options when she shares the news is vile. All of you could have shared your concerns in a much more supportive and sensible way. You're the jerk. You and your delusional family have no right whatsoever to determine whether or not your cousin gets to have her babies. That is her choice and hers alone. I can't imagine how heartbreaking it must have been for her to have you monsters show her absolutely zero affection whatsoever when she shares the greatest joy one can imagine with you. Regardless of what you think, she has been blessed and the Lord has a plan for these babies. She doesn't need you or anyone else's approval in order to have them. Not the jerk. I'm not surprised that these comments are tearing into you. You're speaking a language that Reddit doesn't understand. It's called common sense. She doesn't have an income, a car, or a partner who will even be in the picture, but expects to have triplets and be able to raise them? Another fine example of how truly unintelligent the people on Reddit are to claim that she's in the right and you and your family are in the wrong. We live in a world where speaking common sense will paint you as the bad guy, and people wonder why everything is only getting worse and will continue to do so. If anyone knows a country where the people have common sense, please let me know so I can move there. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP and their family or their cousin? Please let us know.
If she cuts all of you out of her life, sounds like it'll be a win for you, to be honest. Sounds like she plans to be a leech the rest of her life.
My parents call me out at Christmas dinner for living with my fiance before marriage. Okay, 2 can play this game. I'm a nurse practitioner and I'm the primary care provider for a lot of the low-risk maternity cases at the practice where I work. I also work hand in hand with the doctors and midwives to create a healthy maternity, birth, and postpartum situation. My fiance is completing her residency. We live together and have for a few years now. We aren't in any hurry to get married. We originally had plans to do so a couple of years ago, but then we got really busy for 2 years. It's driving my very religious parents crazy that their youngest son is living in sin. I don't really care. I'm an adult and I do what I want. We're getting married in June. So we're visiting my parents for Christmas. The way it came together this year, everyone is at my parents' house. So that's my folks, my 3 siblings, myself and fiance, and 7 grandkids, so 17 people. At dinner, my mom starts going on about how she's so glad that we're finally getting married and she won't be embarrassed at church anymore. And my dad says how proud he is of his 3 older kids who all either waited to get married before moving in together or got married right away after moving in together. My fiance was getting embarrassed and I was getting mad over this stupid argument we have had too many times, and a family dinner was the last straw. I've asked them repeatedly to just accept that they cannot control how I live my life. I refuse to stay with them when I visit, even if I come alone. Hotels are just easier. So I started talking about a premature baby I had been reading about. It was almost 3 months premature and weighed about 1.6 pounds. It was super strong and healthy for being born so little, and the NICU had high hopes for the baby doing well. My mom and dad both got deer in the headlights looks on their faces. Too bad. Shouldn't have messed around with my fiance's feelings. So I asked my oldest brother. He was born almost 4 months premature. Is there a chance that we could check out the family album where we keep all the records of family births and stuff? I already know my brother was over 9 pounds and almost 23 inches long when he was born. My grandmother told me about it the first time my parents tried to shame me. The subject gets changed very fast. After supper, my parents told me that I should not have tried to embarrass them with private things that are not my concern. I told them that if I heard anything about my living arrangements ever again for the rest of my life, I would make sure to keep bringing up the fact that my mom was in her 2nd trimester when they got married. My parents are mad at me for telling them how to behave in their own home, but my fiance is happy that they seem to be off the subject for good. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. That was beautifully handled. You didn't call them out and embarrass them, but you stood your ground. I did laugh out loud when you said where you got your blackmail information. Grandma had that in her pocket for a long time, I'm guessing. Congratulations on your upcoming wedding, Merry Christmas, and I hope you have a great New Year. Not the jerk. I absolutely love this. My own judgy grandmother pretended to be oh so moral in the old-fashioned sense. My father accidentally revealed that she was pregnant when she got married to my grandfather. That was incorrect. She wasn't pregnant at all. My oldest uncle was about 7 months old when they got married. And why they couldn't get married sooner? My grandfather had to get divorced from his first wife first. It's often the people with the most things to hide who enjoy judging others for things that are none of their business. Am I the jerk for buying my niece a $4,000 gift for Christmas? I happen to marry into a family with an insane amount of money. More than they know what to do with, quite honestly. I spent approximately $15,000 per kid for my 3 kids for Christmas, which I am immensely grateful to be able to spend on them. I also donated the same amount to a charity of each kid's choice as well. My mom's side has a rule that we only get each other Christmas gifts if we will be seeing each other that year on Christmas Day. For cousins with kids, we get the kids gifts rather than their parents. My mother hosted this year, and about 10 of my cousins and their kids were coming. I bought each of my cousins' kids something unique, not really thinking about the price, but more what I thought that they would like. My cousin, 35, male, has a 14-year-old daughter. She's the result of a random hookup, so most of us in the family have only met her mother a handful of times and only for a few minutes. My daughter is also 14, and 2 parts of her Christmas Day gifts were a Cartier love ring and a YSL purse. I bought the same for my cousin's daughter, as they are very close in age, and I thought that she'd really like it. My cousin's daughter excitedly FaceTimed her mother to show her the gifts that I had bought her, and upon ending the FaceTime, her mother called my cousin and she was livid. She said that I spent more on her daughter for Christmas than she had and was livid with me. I genuinely didn't think about the cost of the gifts, just more what I thought that she would really like, especially considering I have a 14-year-old daughter myself and I know what they like. My cousin's daughter's mother is really upset with me because she feels that I made her look bad to her own daughter, but I only ever intended on getting her daughter gifts that I thought she'd like. Am I the jerk? You're the jerk. Most 14-year-olds don't dream of YSL purses and Cartier bracelets. I think the money has gone to your head and you just don't live in the real world anymore. What's normal to you and your husband's family is not normal for the majority of the world. I spent $15,000 on each of my 3 kids and donated the same amount to charity. Who spends $90,000 at Christmas? Even if I had it, I wouldn't. People who can afford to? Why is that an issue here? Because Reddit hates people that they're jealous of. I'd love to have gotten a YSL purse at 14 and happy to be able to help out at my favorite cause. But then some others get so jealous they have to resort to hate to put people down. Human nature is a funny thing. Or, get this, they hate the extreme wealth disparity that exists in many countries. Which is OP's fault how? And giving equal amounts to helping others as she gives to her kids is literally helping mitigate that wealth gap. Or would you prefer she empties her bank account and house and gives it all away? Her husband's family success is not something she needs to apologize for. Honestly, people don't get into fortunes big enough that they can spend effortlessly $90,000 for Christmas gifts by being fair. They do that by exploiting workers, clients, environment, and/or the law system. Because being a decent person is not profitable. And sure, OP probably has nothing to do with the cause of the fortune, but she profits off that exploit, and people do have the right to be salty about it. And spending a bit of it on charity, which usually gets included in taxes anyway, does not make it even by no means. Not the jerk. I think you did a nice thing that was just a little extravagant and you unintentionally overshadowed her mother. I think her mother overreacted. It's not like you bought her a car or a puppy or something she needs to be responsible for. To be honest, I think a lot of the "you're the jerk" comments you're getting are from people who are quite jealous and annoyed that you have so much money to spend. I don't think you're malicious at all. I do think the money was excessive, but not enough for me to call you a jerk. So I'm going to vote not the jerk. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or not? Please let us know. I kicked my family out on Christmas after what they said to my daughter. I, 48 female, and my husband, 48 male, have 2 kids, Randy, who's 22, and Eve, who's 19. Eve was diagnosed with autism when she was in elementary school. She does school online currently and can do some pretty basic tasks by herself, but me and my husband have to do a lot for her, cook for her, drive her places, etc. She recently started doing her own laundry, which we're very proud of, but it took like 4 years of learning and encouragement. We love her and we know we'll have to care for her. Eve loves toys. She especially likes dolls and little interactive animal toys. For Christmas, we had my parents, my 2 sisters and their husbands, my one sister's 15-year-old daughter, and my mom's sister and her husband. Randy got a few games he wanted, plus a new laptop he needs for his classes next semester. Eve got dolls, a small dollhouse, some pajamas, some stuffed animals, and the big gift was an interactive horse toy that you can braid the hair of and things. Eve was overjoyed and played with it up until it was time for lunch. I didn't notice anything before, but at lunch, my mom was looking over at my sister, Brianna, and her daughter, Marissa, like they had done something wrong. I helped my daughter get a plate of food, got her a juice box, and went to go get my own food. I then heard yelling and my daughter crying and went back to the table. Turns out, Marissa had told Eve she's childish and shouldn't want toys anymore and needs to grow up, and my sisters both agreed. Marissa told her that she should be braiding her own hair instead of a toy's fake hair and make herself pretty instead of making a toy pretty. My mom and my father were horrified, and they had apparently heard Marissa and Brianna express this earlier and told them that they were being insensitive and will be in trouble if they tell me, my husband, or Eve that. Randy, the great brother he is, took Eve away from the situation and up to her room to calm down. I, as calmly as possible, explained for the millionth time that Eve is autistic. Her brain works differently, and if you were with her daily, you would see that her toys actually help her learn social skills, regulate her emotions, and calm her down. Brianna then said that I baby her too much. We make meals for her, get her food, buy her toys, and drive her everywhere, when we should just force her to learn on her own. Brianna said that because she does school, she's normal enough to live on her own, the exact words. I told Brianna, Marissa, and Brianna's husband to leave. My other sister and her husband tried to defend them, saying that if I just cut the cord, Eve would learn how to survive. I told them to leave too. My husband is with me, as is my father, but my mother said I took it too far by kicking them out and saying I'm never letting them around Eve again. They really hurt Eve. Luckily, she's still playing with her toys, so they didn't seem to ruin her love of them, but she's been sad and crying all day. I just put her to bed and started crying myself once she wasn't able to see me do it. Am I the jerk? I got Eve her food because she has pretty severe motor delays. She's about on the level of a 5-year-old. Normally, I try to let her get her own food, and if she makes a mess, I clean it up. But since there were platters of food, think buffet style on a kitchen counter, that if she spilled, it would make a hazard on the kitchen floor where other people could slip. And my mom has had 2 knee replacements, so if she slips, that would have ruined Christmas even more. Her making a mess while eating isn't a worry because I can clean it later and nobody is going to be walking under the table to slip on it. We've worked with specialists since Eve's diagnosis to figure out the right way to both care for and foster independence. From some testing last year, specialists believe that Eve is at the level of a 4 or 5-year-old socially, 5-year-old motor skills, and academically 14. The problem is, she doesn't appear to have the cognitive ability to apply what she learns in school to the real world. For example, Eve could read a book and identify a character as mean because they don't understand, but she can only understand that my sisters and her cousin are mean, but not really why. Her language fluctuates from nonverbal to verbal with the language capability of a 2-year-old to verbal with the language capability of a 5-year-old. Her academic ability is an outlier, but the specialists don't seem too alarmed by it, so we aren't either. Not the jerk. You're protecting your daughter. And hey, maybe by cutting the cord with your sister's family, you'll force them to learn some empathy. If any cords have to be cut, I'd be looking at the family before the daughter. They were cruel and thoughtless, and then they doubled down on it when you called it out. I'd have given them the boot too. OP did the right thing to protect her daughter. Am I the jerk for giving my wife's Christmas present to my sister? I'm 44, male. My wife is 39, female, and my sister is also 39, female. I'll try to keep it short and sweet. I'm using my second account because my real account has my wife. This below part is just a background on why my sister lives with us at the moment. My sister is back with us at the moment and has been living with us since October because of an ongoing divorce with her husband. My wife was not a fan of this and wanted my sister out and told me to give our other accommodation, which we own, to my sister while she settles for divorce. But my sister wants to live with us as she gets lonely and won't have anyone to cook for her because this whole thing is stressing her out. My wife has left our business because of a broken leg so she can help with the cooking for my sister. Since the start of the year, my wife has been wanting a Dyson Air thing for her hair. I don't get the excitement. And yes, I bought her the gift in November for Christmas and I wrapped it and put it in our garage. A few days ago, my sister was wrapping gifts for Christmas and asked me what I got for my wife. I told her it's a Dyson hair product and a Gucci perfume, around 700 pounds in total. My sister got excited for my wife, but sad again and said that she wanted a Dyson hair product too and used to beg her husband to buy it for her, but he never did. Apparently, he gifted the Dyson to his now girlfriend. This obviously made me mad, so I wanted to buy her another Dyson hair product, the same as my wife. I also had wrapped shoes for my sister for Christmas. I went to different stores, but it was sold out. Just my luck. I looked online and it would only be delivered after Christmas. Because there was no option for my sister, I just removed the name sticker and put my sister's name on the Dyson that I bought for my wife and I gave it to my sister. Keep this in mind, I bought my wife extra Gucci perfume and she still got the gift. And yesterday, I gave everyone their gift and everyone was happy. Until my mom told me that she saw my wife's face during the gift giving and my wife looked hurt, apparently, and asked me why I didn't give my wife the Dyson instead. I thought she was happy with the perfume gift that I gave her. I told my mom the truth and my mother is calling me a jerk. My parents wanted to buy my wife Dyson hair product for Christmas but asked me before they bought it, so I told them I was going to buy it for my wife. So they thought I'd actually give it to my wife and not change the plan last minute. Now my mom told our aunt to, and she thinks I was the jerk too. I told them I will buy my wife the product again because we have plenty of time, but they think it won't be the same as Christmas magic. So am I the jerk? Edit. My sister does not live with our parents because they live up north in Scottish Village. Us, we live in England and our business is in England, and my sister works here and her work is 20-minute drive away from where we live. My wife can walk, she doesn't need crutches. The reason she left our business was because of a broken leg, but she's walkable, but she decided to rest after her cast was off. Obviously, you're the jerk. Think of it this way. Your sister wanted her husband to buy her something and he bought it but gave it to someone else. You think he's wrong for doing this. Your wife wanted you to buy her something and you bought it but gave it to someone else. What is wrong with you? Adding that on top of the fact that you've moved your sister into your home without your wife's approval, And now you expect your wife to cook for your sister? She's a grown woman. She can cook for herself. And if your wife doesn't want her there, she should never have moved in. Why do you care more about your sister's feelings than your wife's? Even your own parents can see that you're being a bad husband. How are you this dense? You're the jerk, but thanks for explaining quite clearly why your sister got a divorce and why you'll get one soon too. You're the jerk 100%, man. Putting your sister's wants and needs ahead of your wife's is inexcusable. You didn't want your sister to live by herself, so she had somebody to cook for her. Really? Am I the jerk for losing it on my sister over Christmas dinner because of her kids? I'm 35, male. Sister is 30. My kids are 7 and 9, and hers are 6 and 12. This year, we hosted Christmas dinner. I adore my sister, and I adore my niece and nephew. They're good kids. We spend a lot of time together, and our kids love playing together. However, her kids have this habit of digging into the food that's being served without it being on their plates. For example, once when we visited, my sister made mashed potatoes, and both kids dipped their fingers into the pot and licked them, dipped again, etc. My kids never did this in their life. I don't have a problem with that. Her house, her rules. My wife and kids hate it though. So we were settling down at dinner. Almost all the guests had arrived. We had some light drinks, and my wife and I brought out the first course, which consisted of multiple things like cheese, grapes, ham, steamed veggies, meatballs, etc. on big platters so our guests can serve themselves with whatever they liked. As per usual, kids started going around the table to pick stuff from the platters. We laughed and cheered as they played around until I noticed that my niece and nephew were grabbing something, taking a bite, and putting it back. My wife noticed it, so she went discreetly around to get the stuff that they bit out off. I pulled my sister aside and told her to please tell her kids to stop doing that. In comes the next meal, which was a light soup with sour cream. The instant my wife put the serving bowl down, my niece and nephew grabbed the ladle and started to lick it. We kinda laughed nervously. My wife replaced the bowl in soup. Again, I told my sister to speak to her kids about it. Before the main course was served, my wife and I decided to just plate everything ourselves for each guest, which was a lot of work, but worth it. Again, niece and nephew immediately got up and started going around, dipping their fingers in random plates. At this point, my wife got a bit angry and told them aloud to wait patiently for their plates. Sister got irked. Guests started to get uncomfortable. Sister said, "They're just kids." After an hour or so, we got out some chocolate cake. Niece and nephew literally put their hands in it before my wife got a chance to cut it. I saw her eyes started to get watery out of frustration, and I blew up. Yelled at my sister for not disciplining her kids and making everyone uncomfortable. My sister and brother-in-law got up and left. Several guests said that they found this gross, but mom and dad said that I should have spoken to my sister in private. Now I feel like a jerk. Not the jerk. 6 is old enough to know better. The 12-year-old is too old to be doing that. Table manners are basic. Not the jerk. You went to their mom privately multiple times and nothing was done. It was upsetting your guests and your wife, and the kids are definitely old enough to restrain themselves around company, especially if they're at someone else's house. Lose it on me and tell me to get a new job? Fine, I quit. Since my last story garnered some attention, I thought I'd post this one as well. Back when I used to work at McDonald's, they would treat me so terribly. I would work extremely hard with very little gratitude. I was only on $13 an hour at 15 to 16 years old, but even so, I'd put my absolute all into what I did. I'd run stock, take orders over the headset while packing orders, I did the front, rush back up to the booth and cash the orders, etc. We were timed, and my times would always be under the maximum limit, unless we were in a rush. I'd been working there for around 9 to 10 months at this point, and slowly losing my sanity every single shift I did. The managers and staff were terrible, but the worst person was the store manager. She'd get angry at me for things that would be completely out of my control. If a customer changes their mind at the payment window, we need to get a manager to come in and give us a code to remove it from the screen. The managers would refuse to give us their codes to use during a rush, so they had to run up to my booth from the front to get rid of an item from an order. So many times I had customers change their minds at the window, and I'd ask over the headset for a code, and my store manager would scream at me from down the front, then walk up to my booth and go off on me for making her use her code, saying, "You need to learn to just take orders right," when it wouldn't even be my fault. She'd also scream at me if I accidentally brought down the wrong stock, or if I was too slow in getting stock. Usually I'd be busy cashing cars and taking orders during the busy rushes. She would even make me come into work on days I requested off due to my hip dysplasia or other back problems playing up, and she would threaten me with getting me fired if I didn't come into work, making me work through my pain so I wouldn't get much time to myself that wasn't just laying in bed at home in pain. So back to the story. After a very long 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. shift, I was up in the drive-thru booth at around 3:58 p.m., 2 minutes before my shift was over. We were dead, as we usually were at that time, and I was just kicking around waiting for my shift to end. I got a text from my mom asking if I needed picking up from work, so I took out my phone and texted back a simple, "Yes, please," and put my phone away. At this point, it's important to mention that there was a camera in the top right corner of my booth, and if a manager looked, they could see what I was doing. Not even a second after I put my phone away, my store manager started to talk over the headset. Manager:
Jazz, what are you doing right now?
Me: waiting for cars? Why?
That's not a good way to use your time. How about you get off your phone and do what I pay you to do, or you can go get a different job.
I was really upset. I started to cry, but was holding in tears because I didn't want to be seen. She had called me out over the headset, where everyone else in the store who was wearing a headset, everyone, could hear. To add some more clarity as to why I was so upset, there were 3 girls who were heavily favored, and they would often just sit in the crew room for sometimes up to an hour on their phones, and no one said anything to them. They were terrible workers too, but since they were favored, they got the best treatment. When it was time to clock out, I just left and started bawling my eyes out because of the embarrassment. I worked my butt off with no gratitude for months, but the second I text 2 words to my mom, I get scorned. My mom was worried and very angry. This is where my malicious compliance comes in. When I got home, I remembered what she said about finding a different job, so I wrote a very lovely email to the shift manager that went like this. "Hi, shift manager. I've decided after a lot of thought that I will be resigning from my casual position effective immediately. I've had a few experiences over the past few months that haven't been very positive, and I believe the best option for me is to resign. I appreciate and thank you for all the opportunities you've given me over the past year or so. Thanks heaps. Jazz." 10 minutes later, I got 3 phone calls from the store manager, but I wouldn't pick up. Then the shift manager also didn't pick up. I was absolutely fuming, so I did what she asked me to do: find a new job. I was told by my best friend who was working at the same store that the store manager had been going around saying I called her terrible things and that I was a horrible little brat who wouldn't listen to her rules. I laughed and said, "Well, it's a good thing I'm not working there anymore then." While on my job hunt around 2 weeks later, I got a call from the shift manager saying that the store manager had been relocated, but later fired due to a staff complaint, and wanted to know if I'd come back because of how good a staff member I was. Due to the lack of work at the time and needing money for teenager things, I went back and did the worst job I possibly could, basically just messing everyone around and being a lazy jerk. Edit. This was because I'd been called and asked to come back with promises that things had changed and the new store manager would be better. Being 16, I fell for the corporate talk and I went back, which resulted in them treating me even worse and even refused to give me the day off for my grandma's funeral. They messed me around, so I messed them around in return while looking for a new job. Then I quit again 2 months later for my current job at a Mexican place. The best part was that I put the store manager down as a reference, and when my employer contacted her about me, she hung up the phone on them. I explained what happened, and we all laughed, and I got the job. Forget McDonald's. Karen steals my car on Christmas. I'm 16, female, and my dad's family comes from old money. His parents never approved of his relationship with my mother and never did even when she got pregnant. He didn't see me for the first 10 years of my life until my grandparents passed away. Before that, when I was 7, my mother started to date Melissa, my stepmom, who has a daughter named Grace who's 2 years older than me. She used to be mean to me because she had a dad and I didn't. Things got worse when I found out that I did have a dad, he just wasn't around. Her dad had to intervene to make her stop bullying me. 3 years after that, my dad contacted my mom, explained what happened, and we reconnected. Grace's changed too, because at the same time, her dad started to distance from them until he ended up moving 2 states away to be closer to his new wife's family when I turned 13. I remember that during the first few years, if my dad bought me something, he'd buy something for Grace too. Not as big or meaningful, but he never left her out. She usually threw fits at Christmas because he would buy me tech, phones, iPads, laptops, headphones, and only get her clothes. Pretty and good clothes, to be honest. This Christmas was the worst though. Since Grace has to move for uni next year, her mom wanted to bring her grandparents, uncles, cousins, and dad to celebrate. So she asked me to spend New Year's with my dad this year, and I agreed to. My dad got here a few days ago to drop off our gifts, which included a brand new car because now that Grace is moving, she can't drive me around anymore. I was honestly so happy and excited. When Grace and her mom arrived and saw the car, they thought it was for her, from her dad or grandparents, because she's the one leaving for college. But my mom kindly explained to them that my dad had dropped it off for me. They weren't happy about this, but the day went on. They were excited about the small party for Grace. This morning, my mom and Grace were with Grandpa dropping some stuff off, so it was only my stepmom and I. Around 10 a.m., Grace's dad called and said that he wouldn't be able to make it and that he wished her luck before hanging up. It was really messed up. My stepmom was so mad, and when I asked what I could do, she said that she'll show me and started taking all of my presents from underneath the Christmas tree. I was so confused, and when she took my keys, I asked what she thought she was doing. She said,
Grace doesn't need to feel like second best during this Christmas.
I said that she couldn't take my things my dad gave me, and she only answered with a,
I'm your mom. I can do whatever I want.
And hopped in my car and left. I called my mom to tell her what happened, and after that, I called my dad. He told my moms that if Melissa didn't give back my things, he'll report them as stolen, including my car, and while my mom is torn between us, Melissa and Grace said that I ruined Christmas because my stepmom might go to jail and that not everything is about me. I called out my brother's girlfriend for being a gold digger after she Googled the cost of our Christmas gifts. My brother James has a girlfriend, Lindsay, who he's been dating for 7 months. He decided to bring her to Christmas at my house, stay over Christmas Eve, and leave the next day after lunch. I had met Lindsay at drinks before this, and she seemed nice. When they arrived, Lindsay walked in and complimented my decorations, large tree in the foyer, and asked how much they cost. I was a bit surprised by the question, but I just said, more than I'd like, and moved on. Throughout the evening, she asked several questions centered around money. She asked my husband how much he paid for our house, my stepdad how much money he made in his previous job, how much my watch cost. She even Googled one of our art pieces to see how much it sold for, and started talking about how crazy it was that we spent that much, which frankly was very uncomfortable. My stepdad pulled my brother aside and asked if there was a problem, but my brother just said it was normal for her to do that, but he did say he'd speak to her about it. On Christmas morning, we all gathered around to open presents, and thankfully, Lindsay hadn't said anything else, so I figured James had spoken to her about her intrusive questions. However, at lunch, we were talking about plans for January, and Lindsay proudly said she didn't know how we could afford to do anything in January as she added up the total we had spent on gifts, and then proudly proclaimed the total amount. The whole table went silent, and honestly, I was equal parts shocked and annoyed that someone could be so ignorant. I looked at Lindsay and said, "You are the world's most diligent gold digger. Seriously, would you like to be the family accountant since you're already tracking expenses?" Lindsay stuttered out an apology and tried to explain, but my stepdad just changed the conversation and we moved on. She was mercifully quiet for the rest of dinner. After they left, my brother messaged me saying that I'd really upset Lindsay and I was out of line with what I said. I argued that he had said he had talked to her and he clearly didn't. Not that someone should have needed guidance to know how crass her comments were. He's saying I owe both of them an apology, but I think Lindsay's behavior was disgraceful. My parents say Lindsay was wrong, but I probably should have said something in private, or they could have, and I shouldn't have said something in front of everyone. Am I the jerk? All of these everyone sucks heroes and you're the jerk replies are dumbfounding. Have any of you people ever had an interaction with an actual human being? In what world is asking people about how much money they make and adding up the totals of Christmas gifts normal? Not the jerk. She was being incredibly rude and obviously making everyone uncomfortable. I just don't understand why everyone here is making excuses for her, semantics of the terminology or not. Why would you sit there and add up the total of what a family spent and then tell them about it? They know. Whether you grew up with money or not, common sense is required. Unless she's on the spectrum, which is the common excuses the "you're the jerks and everyone sucks here" people are giving. But come on, people here always get defensive when someone posts here and is from a wealthier background, constantly making excuses. If this was reversed, would you guys be okay with it? If she Googled how much a pair of socks or how much an old TV was and passed a comment, if she went on about how little the family spent and then declared at Christmas morning, "Oh, you guys should have loads of money in January since you spent so little during Christmas," would you all be making the same comments? I doubt it. You'd be up in arms and calling her a snob. Not the jerk, and I really don't get the people saying you are the jerk. It's so unbelievably rude to make so many comments about money. I could see maybe one or two offhanded comments, but to fixate on money so much that you tally up how much money was spent on Christmas presents and then announce it to the whole family? Don't apologize to your brother. Why should you? His girlfriend came into your house for Christmas and immediately started questioning you about money and practically appraising everything in your house. She should be apologizing to you, and your brother should be apologizing on her behalf. If someone is rude to you, you're allowed to defend yourself and shut them down, which is what you did. Maybe next time she'll learn to keep her mouth shut and not constantly talk about money. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or their brother's girlfriend? Please let us know.
How much did you pay for that suit, Reddit boy? Anything over $20 and you got ripped off.
Am I the jerk for removing the door to my son's room indefinitely? Yesterday, while I was making lunch, I heard a really loud sound, as if the ceiling was falling or a bookshelf had fallen. My husband, 41, male, and our daughter, 17, were out. The only other person in the house was my son, who's 16. I was pretty sure he was in his room, which is at the opposite side of the house from the kitchen. So while making my way there, I checked every room and everything seemed in order. I knocked on my son's door and called his name. No answer. I must have knocked and called 3 times before trying to open the door, which was locked. At this point, I was getting really freaked out, thinking that maybe he had tipped his wardrobe or bookshelf and it had fallen over him and he was passed out on the floor. I was basically screaming his name, but no answer. I have no idea how I did it. I just threw myself into the door and it broke. Now, clearly the door was already weak. I'm thinking termites. But yeah, it broke. My son was fine. He was freaked out about the door, but he was fine. The sound was his TV with the volume at the max, apparently, and he didn't answer me calling because he didn't want me bothering his movie. His words were, "You were screaming like a harpy and it was annoying. I was trying to watch the movie. Fix the door." I said no. I wasn't going to fix it, since to fix it, I would have to buy a new door, and doors are expensive. And as soon as his dad got home, he would remove the door entirely as it was too broken to just stay there. He got really mad, said it's his right to have a door. He deserves his privacy. I said he had a door, and while I was the one that broke it, it was a consequence of his actions. So if he wanted a door, he would have to buy it. I know he doesn't have the money for it right now. Until then, no door. He can change in the bathroom. He said, "Forget you." I said he was grounded. Am I the jerk about the door? My husband is fine with it, says only I know how scared I was, so only I can know the appropriate punishment. I'm now terrified that if anything happens where we really need to reach my son, we won't be able to. But I have calmed down since, and I'm wondering if I'm the jerk. Not the jerk. Replace the door, remove the TV from his room. You would be the jerk for not getting him a new door. He needs privacy. He doesn't need a TV. Think of different and better ways to discipline that don't remove his privacy and space. Kids typically don't need a TV. If he didn't answer because of the TV, take that away and not his door. I usually say parents are always jerks for taking away doors, but this, absolutely not the jerk. But you and your husband need to sit down and think about how to fix your son's behavior ASAP, because he's way out of line. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her son? Please let us know.
Yowza, having a son that acts like that, no wonder some folks are deciding they don't want to have kids.
Being fired because of lack of training? Okay, let's destroy your company. This happened to me quite a while ago, but it's always left a sour taste in my mouth, and I want to share it to alleviate the issue. I worked for a car crash rental company. When you had a crash in your own car, we were the company your insurance company would get in touch with to hire out a car to you or keep you mobile until yours was fixed or written off. I was a call handler. I received files of individuals needing a vehicle. I would make contact and book them a vehicle. This was all new to me. I did not come from this working background. The line manager was aware, and so was the floor manager. Both promised full training and support. However, this was not adequately given. The training consisted of, "There's the phone, there's the files, go at it." The first couple of days were nerve-wracking, but I picked things up relatively quickly, and my line manager was happy with what I was doing. Then on day 3, I had a booking. Having not done one before, I asked for help, and I was confronted with eye rolls, sighs of disbelief, and an obvious inherent lack of motivation to help. Begrudgingly, I was taken over to a computer that was situated in the middle of the office floor. This was the only computer in this multi-million-pound company that had access to a national database of insurance information, and most importantly, personal details and driving license information for everyone in my country. I asked why we only had one computer. It turns out this database requires a license, and the company can't be bothered to pay for it. So this computer was given to them via a third party who has the license. However, if they ever got found out, they would receive a heavy fine and the third party reprimanded for providing an unlicensed company their personal license. The general reason this was used was to clarify the customer's details, to make sure that they were qualified to drive and that these details were real and not fraudulent. I followed the manager's teachings exactly and rented out a vehicle. The following day, the office floor seemed off. I was getting weird looks and I could hear whispers. Knowing something was up, I did some digging. I chatted to the IT team during break, just general stuff. Then I asked about the database PC. The guy was very happy to tell me not only that they hide it when they get inspections, but also where they hide it, the extremes they sometimes go to, and he even gave me the network and computer's name. I went back to my cubicle after the discussion and cracked on. On day 5, I found out what the problem was. My rental wasn't done correctly, and instead of my line manager taking the blame due to poor training, she had thrown me under the bus. I was called in to see the floor manager. I explained to the floor manager exactly what happened, exactly how much training I had, and who gave it to me. I even showed proof with the notebook I had showing the notes I had made in it. He accepted what I said and told me to go back to work. Later on that day, when I got home, I received a call. I had been fired, regardless of it being my line manager's fault. I later found out that they were having an affair with each other, which explains why I was given the boot and not the line manager. I was livid with what happened. I followed all the instructions to the letter. It wasn't my fault that I was taught incorrectly. So I did what any self-respecting, poorly treated, and unfairly dismissed employee would do. I called the database company. I reported my previous employer for using their system without a license. I told them the network and computer name. I told them where the computer was situated. I gave them the servicing schedule, and I even told them where to find it when they hid it, due to inspections. Fast forward 6 months, and I'm happy in a new job. I haven't heard anything from or in regards to the car crash rental company. That is, until I wander into my local supermarket, and lo and behold, my line manager was there, working at a checkout. Turns out, after I left, the company had a surprise inspection from the database company. They found the computer with someone else's license on it, found records of it being hidden on planned inspections. They found usage dates and how many times it was used. The company was reported to the authorities for mishandling personal information and were fined, but it didn't stop there. A full investigation was launched by the police, and the company was fined for fraudulent activities. The owner was caught and given a suspended sentence and was also forced to pay a fine. The database owners were given compensation from the car crash rental company for the licensing breach. Some more authorities got involved too, leaving the car crash rental company in a horrible place. All in all, 6 months after I left, and following one 10-minute call, I brought the company to their knees. It was sold and absorbed into another, with most management losing their jobs. Word of warning, treat your staff right, don't have affairs, and if you need a license to use a database or software, pay for it and don't use someone else's. Am I the jerk for losing it and telling my in-laws to stop calling me mama and trying to erase my identity? I have 2 kids who are both 2 years old. I hate how everyone thinks of me as being just a mommy now. I don't get to be my own person. I'm just mommy. Husband doesn't face this. He gets gifts from everyone that have to do with his hobbies. Me? I get a bunch of mommy stuff. Tee-hee, mommy needs wine. And like matching outfits. I don't mean like one of those cutesy matching pajama sets that the nurses and horse girls wear in their staged Christmas Insta pics. I mean like people actually think I'm going to go out in public wearing some cutesy matching outfits with my toddlers, as though I think they're mini versions of myself, or dolls. From the time we got to the in-laws, it was mama this and mama that. At some point, my sister-in-law said it, and I said, "You know my name is Carmen, right?" She just looked at me funny and said, "Of course, silly." I said, "So why do you keep calling me mama? You aren't going around calling my husband papa." Sister-in-law just looked at me like I had two heads and was like, okay. This went on all over Christmas. "Here you go, mama. Want another slice, mama?" At that point, I was just like, do you guys mind calling me by my name instead of calling me mama? The same sister-in-law from earlier did the whole golly gee doe-eyed thing and said, "But you're such a good mama." I said that I'm not just a mom. I gestured to the things that husband got from them for Christmas and said, "Why didn't you guys get him anything that says papa? Everything you gave me is somehow related to me being a mom. Why does he get to be his own person?" Mother-in-law grabbed my hand and squeezed it and said that she was sorry that she made me feel like this. She was just so excited about being a grandma, and she never really thought of things like that. I was feeling a little better until sister-in-laws 2 and 3 started going after me. One of them did that whole, "Are you okay? Do you need to talk to someone? You sound so angry. It isn't healthy." Faux concern thing that's meant to shame you for having any emotional response. The other one was angry and saying that, "Is being a mom somehow beneath you?" And, "Do you think you're better than the rest of us?" And all that. When we finally left, he asked me why I'd kept it in for so long, and I said that I haven't. No one listened to me before. I've said these things plenty of times. I've always asked them to call me by my name and not some disgusting nickname that boils me down to giving birth. He nodded, but said that I had put a big show on this weekend and that I needed to apologize for the outburst at some point. I said sure, as soon as sister-in-laws apologized to me for dehumanizing me for years. We're at a stalemate. Am I the jerk? No. Your sister-in-laws owe you an apology, and you owe them nothing, even after. I'm so petty, I'd start calling them sister-in-law all the time and only getting them sister-in-law stuff. Not the jerk. Once again, this is a case of family members needing to be confronted about their behavior because politely asking them to stop didn't work. And then it's all, "Why didn't you say something?" Your answer to your husband is exactly correct. If you need to apologize for your outburst, then they need to apologize for their failure to listen to you until you reached your breaking point and had an outburst. Not the jerk. Your mother-in-law reacted appropriately, in my opinion, saying she didn't realize and had no ill intent, which I believe. Your point is well made, and your sister-in-laws just seem like people who can't take feedback. Many of my female friends who had kids have expressed the same frustration as you. You're right to speak up. Everyone sucks here. I don't know, I feel like you made this into a way bigger deal than it was, and I get why they think you don't like being a mom or you think it's beneath you. Who cares what they call you? You literally are a mom, and a lot of times when you're around kids, others will say things like, "Here, give this to mama," or "Take this to mama." They're not going to be constantly saying your real name around your kid. Your kid knows you as mama. There are so many horrible things going around the world right now, and it's crazy to see petty little things like this that don't even matter. Was it really worth ruining your relationship with your family? Do you even care about your husband's relationship with his own family? Disgusting nickname. Oh, please. You're the jerk. Get over yourself. Is being a mom somehow beneath you? I mean, kind of. Priorities. Being myself, parenting, partnering, other adult duties. Well, unpopular opinion, but I think you're the jerk, at least a little bit. Some moms call each other mama as a term of endearment. You have every right to not like it. Every right to directly tell them that you hate being called that, to please stop. However, I'm almost positive that nobody was trying to erase your identity. If you're feeling that way, maybe that's something that you are struggling with yourself. It's hard being a mom. I should add that the whole mama thing really depends on where you live. I'm in the South where it's common practice, but depending on where you live, I guess it could just have a different connotation. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her in-laws? Please let us know.
Hey Reddit boy, I think I'm gonna start calling you Papa Reddit.
Not one, but 2 wild Karens teaming up on me. So for a little context, I went out of town to help my grandmother who wasn't doing too well health-wise. So she asked me to run to the store to grab a few things for her. When I got to the store, I started shopping like any other customer. To avoid being bothered while I'm in the store, I always wear those big over-the-ear headphones that clearly say, "I'm not going to hear anything you say." Well, I continue shopping, and I pause my music to listen to an audio message in my group chat when all of a sudden I hear someone say,
Excuse me.
I ignored it because I didn't think it had anything to do with me. But then I hear,
Excuse me.
followed by fingers snapping, but even louder, and the voice sounded like nails on a chalkboard. Next thing I know, I see this old Karen rush in front of me and snap her fingers in my face. At this point, I'm now visibly annoyed, so I take my headphones off and just stare at her. She goes on to say,
Geez, are you deaf?
and I reply, no, but clearly I don't want to be bothered. She goes on to say,
Wow, you all rude. Is that any way to speak to a customer?
and I look at her confused. But then it dawns on me that I'm currently wearing a red shirt, which is the uniform of the employees at this store. Once I realized that she thought I was an employee, I immediately attempted to clear it up by saying, sorry ma'am, but, and before I can finish, this Karen begins to lay into me, calling me everything under the sun except my name. At this point, she threatens to get a manager to get me fired. But wouldn't you know it, a manager just so happened to be coming down the aisle to check the disturbance. When the manager got there, she began to ask what was going on, and before I knew it, Karen started telling the manager how I had verbally assaulted her and was calling her all types of inappropriate names, and finally she finished by saying,
I want this employee fired.
Now, under normal circumstances, you would think that the manager would clear up the confusion about my employment with the company, or lack thereof. But boy, oh boy, I could not have been more wrong. The manager then takes the side of Karen and begins to tell me off about how I'm not honoring the employee code of conduct. At this point, I'm livid, because not only did I get verbally assaulted by one Karen, now I'm getting my ear chewed off by another Karen, and a manager no less. Now, I can usually keep my cool in rough situations, but this one had officially pushed me over the edge. So after the manager finishes telling me what's what, she looked at me and said,
Do you have anything to say for yourself?
I looked at the first Karen, then looked at the second one, and asked the manager, are you new here? The manager says,
No, I've been here for 8 years.
I then proceeded to ask, have I ever interviewed with you? She then said,
No, but I don't.
and before she could finish her sentence, her face turned bright red as she realized that I didn't have a name tag on or any of the employee equipment. This is when I yelled to both of them, I don't work here. Both the Karen and the manager looked absolutely mortified. I told them to get out of my way as I made my way to the register. As I get to the register, I get approached by another manager of the store, and at this point I'm thinking to myself, you have got to be kidding me. But to my surprise, the manager explained that she somewhat heard the conversation and did not want me to leave the store with a bad taste in my mouth. So to make up for the nonsense that I had just endured, this manager, who we will call Maria, comped my entire transaction, which was only about $50. She assured me that she would personally take care of the manager Karen that was yelling at me. I don't know what happened to both of them, but I do know that my grandma got what she needed free of charge. Am I the jerk for reminding my stepmother about how she really met my father? I, 21 male, was at my father's house for Christmas this year. Most of the paternal family was there, but the only people relevant to this story are my dad, who's 49, his wife, Sasha, who's 39, and my sister Jasmine, who's 18, and her boyfriend, Mike, who's 21. Jasmine is my only full sister, and we're extremely close. She's currently 3 months pregnant, which obviously isn't ideal since she's only 18, but I'm going to support her regardless. I do not like her boyfriend, but he's good to her and able to provide for her and the baby. Sasha has always hated Jasmine. No one has any idea why, and my dad prefers to ignore it. After the Christmas dinner, Jasmine, Mike, my dad, Sasha, and I were clearly up when Jasmine suddenly felt nauseous and went to go sit down. Mike went with her. This is when Sasha decided to begin talking badly about her for being a pregnant teen and for being unmarried. She then started saying that she thinks that Jasmine got pregnant on purpose because Mike's family is wealthy, which doesn't make any sense since our family is well off too. Sasha is known for saying horrible things to get a reaction, so I was ignoring her. So was my dad, until she asked me how I felt about my younger sister having a kid with someone older than me, literally only 4 months older than me. At this point, I was done, so I stopped washing the dishes and I told her to shut her mouth because she broke up my parents' marriage. That's when my father finally decided to get involved, but I went on and reminded Sasha of the fact that when Jasmine was little, she was in the hospital a lot, and she, Sasha, was one of the nurses that cared for her on the ward, and she began an affair with my father. I also decided to remind her of how her eldest child, my half-sister, was born 8 months after she married my dad. The situation devolved into shouting, and turns out a lot of my paternal family didn't know the truth about how my dad and Sasha met. I ended up leaving, and so did Jasmine and Mike, and a few other people. Now, my dad is demanding that I apologize to his wife for embarrassing her and making her look bad in front of the whole family. Now, I want an unbiased view on whether or not I am the jerk for rising to my stepmother's bait, her insults to Jasmine, and going lower by exposing her. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. She has no room to talk about your sister being a pregnant teen when she's a homewrecker. I bring the same stuff up to my father's wife. I'll never refer to her as stepmother since she's only 2 years older than me when she starts pointing out flaws in others. Sometimes you just have to put them in their place and never apologize for telling the truth. Am I the jerk for telling my brother-in-law he has a good life because he's living off of my sister? My family's Vietnamese, and our parents were typical Viet parents. They immigrated to the US, and the entire time we were growing up, they emphasized the importance of education. They pushed us hard, and extracurricular activities that didn't boost our chances of getting into college were not allowed. I hated seeing my friends join the cheerleading squad while I had to be in band. My friends were able to go to school dances while I had to go to tutoring. I resented my parents for many years and told them so. Their answer was always the same: hate us all you want now, but thank us later. I'm now a surgeon, and all my siblings have high-paying careers. The siblings with the lowest salary makes almost $160,000 a year as a supervising pharmacist in a hospital. We're all living very well and are very happy with our lives. Now that I'm a mother, I can admit that my parents were right. My sister, an attorney, is married to Bill. He's not Asian and works as a chef at a restaurant. Unlike movies or cooking shows, he's only making about $50,000 a year, while his wife is pulling in about $500,000 as a partner in her firm. Over Christmas, we were gathered at my parents' house, and I was asked by my niece, my brother's daughter, about my career. Her parents are pushing her into the medical field, and she wanted to know what it takes. During our conversation, she said she wants to be a teacher and not a doctor. She told me she feels pressured into studying too much and can't enjoy life like her friends can. I pointed out that I went through the exact same thing, and teaching won't give her the life she's accustomed to. I said if she's a doctor, she can always teach on the side. I told her about a colleague who's also a physician and volunteers to teach in his old high school. Brother-in-law overheard us and chimed in about how she should follow her dream of teaching because money does not equal happiness. He pointed out that he makes as much as a teacher and lives a great life. I didn't appreciate his nosiness, so I replied that he has a great life because my sister makes 10 times his salary and bought him his brand new $125,000 electric car for Christmas. I turned to my niece and told her unless she wants to live off of someone else, she needs to make her own money. Brother-in-law got his feelings hurt and went to complain to my sister. She told me I was wrong to say that to brother-in-law and that I should apologize. I'm refusing since I only stated the truth, but now they're refusing to come to my house for Viet New Year. I'm hosting the entire family, unless I apologize. Wow, you're the jerk. Bill heard his niece getting some very one-sided advice. He chimed in with his perspective, which he is just as much entitled to as you are to yours, and which is just as valuable to your niece as yours is. That's not nosiness, that's looking out for his niece, exactly the same thing you were doing. Your ad hominem attack was completely uncalled for, and it's sad that with all your education, you haven't yet learned that money doesn't buy happiness. If it did, there wouldn't be so many miserable rich people. I'm glad you're satisfied with your life, truly, but as a single woman working for a nonprofit at nonprofit wages, I assure you there are many different ways to achieve a good life. She didn't lie, and brother-in-law was being nosy. His wife is providing the good life for him, so yeah, he wasn't looking out for his niece. This isn't, was I technically truthful? This is, am I the jerk? And while OP may have been truthful, as far as they are aware, they were absolutely a jerk. OP's definition of the good life, and yours too apparently, is based on extremely narrow parameters, which is fine. If it works for you, then it works for you. But just because that's your definition doesn't mean it's the only definition. It's crazy to assume that he wasn't looking out for his niece just because his advice differs from yours. And even using your definition, I would absolutely not encourage anyone to go into the medical profession right now. Higher education costs are up, potential salaries are down, job satisfaction is down as doctors spend more and more of their time complying with insurance and government regulations and less time working with patients. The math is very different than it was a mere 10 years ago. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her brother-in-law? Please let us know. Boyfriend gets mad and destroys my Christmas ornament. So my boyfriend hates Christmas. He doesn't like giving or receiving gifts or any of the festive traditions. We've been together for 4 years and he knows I love Christmas, so he plays along. Well, last night we agreed we'd take the tree down next week, but when we came downstairs today, he started taking everything down. His reasoning being, Christmas is over and the tree takes up space. Now here's the thing. A lot of the ornaments we have are like family heirlooms. Most of them are older or the same age as me, 24, or were handmade by my deceased grandmother. My boyfriend started just tossing the ornaments on the table, which started stressing me out. I was telling him to stop, to calm down, or either move, and I'll put everything away. He was getting angry and started yelling at me because I'm trying to keep the tree up. Well, you probably guessed it. He threw an ornament and it broke. It was one of my grandmother's handmade ones. I took one look and just broke down, like ugly crying. He started getting more mad, telling me I'm being childish and stupid for getting upset about the tree. I feel like I'm the jerk because I started yelling at him to step away from the tree because he was going to break more ornaments. And when he wouldn't and kept calling me childish, I kept yelling at him and telling him that he's being a jerk. After he put everything away, he tried to talk to me, still telling me that I was being childish and stupid about the tree and ornaments. I get how it might be childish, but I don't have memories of my grandmother. But I have a picture, and growing up, whenever I was sad, I would hug and talk to her. I only have a small amount of jewelry or handmade ornaments or trinkets from her that are extremely special to me. So I don't know if I'm just being stupid and blew things up. Edit. The ornament is fixable. It was a handmade clay wreath, and luckily only part of the bow and the part you hang on the tree broke off, which I can fix. To all those showing concern, my boyfriend is never like this. He's always shown me, my belongings, and my family respect. He has no Christmas bad experiences from the past, and despite not liking Christmas, he has always put an effort into doing my Christmas traditions. That's partly why I was so confused on if I was the jerk, because this was so out of the normal for my relationship. He went upstairs for an hour, and when he came back, he apologized. He said he was getting stressed and frustrated about me yelling, and he wasn't being as careful as he should have because of it. He said it was really an accident and that he felt bad about breaking the ornament. I'm planning on having a discussion with him as the way he handled the situation wasn't right, and we'll see how things go. Edit 2. Oh boy, so this is getting a lot of attention, which is why I'm adding a second edit. I had a headache and took a nap for a few hours. When I came back downstairs, my boyfriend sat with me and gave me a real apology. He said he handled the situation completely wrong and that it was entirely his fault, and that he never should have talked to me that way. He said he felt absolutely horrible about breaking the ornament, and he should have treated them better and stopped as soon as he saw me crying. He hasn't been feeling well the past couple of days and has been exhausted after spending the week with our family. On top of which we found out we have to get tested to see if we might be sick. He thinks he's just irritable because of that, which he said he knows isn't an excuse. I know many of you reached out and are worried about my safety, and I really appreciate that. My boyfriend has never mocked or made fun of my interests or traditions. He's always happy to participate and do things with me. He's always cared for my happiness and well-being and has always been supportive. He's never made me feel unsafe and has always settled any arguments by talking and communicating. This outburst was so out of the ordinary, which is why I was so confused. I think you need to throw out the boyfriend rather than the tree. There is just no excuse for this behavior. Absolutely none. So don't let him gaslight you into thinking you are somehow to blame here. For the sake of your Christmas spirit, your long-term happiness, and the safety of your precious ornaments, get out now. I'm not saying this lightly, but a man who can be so callous with things you hold dear isn't someone you should want in your life. Not the jerk. My in-laws freaked out over me not baking a ham for them on Christmas. I'll start this off by saying I'm a born and raised vegetarian. I've never eaten meat, let alone learned to prepare it. My husband and I are newly married and recently bought our first apartment. It's small, but it's ours, and it's across the road from his place of work, which was a bonus since he's often on call. Per his family tradition, the most recently wed couple host Christmas dinner. I initially tried to offer it to my sister-in-law as she had wanted to host the year previously, but brother-in-law married her 2 months after Christmas, so she never got the opportunity. Additionally, we are a vegetarian home, and our one-bedroom apartment isn't ideal for hosting. While my sister-in-law was thrilled, The rest of the family insisted that we had to host. I was told that as long as I got food for everyone, that it would be fine. Here's where I might be the jerk. I misunderstood. I thought this meant as long as I had enough food and made sure to accommodate food allergies, that they would be happy. Christmas Day, my husband had to work until 4 p.m., so I was left preparing dinner alone, but I still put together a feast, including a plant-based roast. People started coming over and even commenting on how delicious everything smelled. Once my husband arrived, he greeted the family and joined me in the kitchen for finishing touches and taking everything to the table. The family began to gather, and a few people commented on how good everything looked, until father-in-law asks, "Where's the ham?" My husband explained that I wasn't comfortable making meat, especially ham, since undercooked pork can especially be dangerous, and that instead we had a plant-based roast alternative, and father-in-law proceeded to make remarks about how they drove an hour for plants. Then, even the people who had made positive comments changed their tune, talking about how it was missing something, etc. At one point, mother-in-law said she wished they had had sister-in-law host. My husband snapped and told them to stop disrespecting the meal, and myself, since I worked hard on it. Mother-in-law argued back that I disrespected them by not respecting their dietary choices, and that she believed she was clear when she told me to prepare food for everyone. My husband told her that if she was going to continue to be disrespectful, that she could leave. Shortly after, everyone left, but my husband has been getting texts since about how my selfishness ruined Christmas, possibly the last father-in-law would be around for. I feel horrible that he's in the middle of all of this. This was my mistake, but at the same time, I was clear we are vegetarian and that I didn't even want to host. I guess I'm looking for an outside perspective. Am I the jerk? Edit. For the people asking if his family was aware, we just had a fully vegetarian catered wedding 4 months ago. So yes. Not the jerk. Hosts determine the menus. Guests do not determine the menus. You offered your best and your guests were impolite and demanding. It's good that your husband had your back. Do not host these people again. If they want a specific menu, let them figure it out. Not the jerk. 1. It's your house. You make what you want. They can make all the meat they want next Christmas at their house. They basically imposed on you anyhow. 2. You went out of your way to cook for them and probably pay for all the food too. You can make whatever you want. 3. You being vegetarian is a dietary choice. Them craving and expecting meat on the holiday is not. If anything, they were disrespecting your dietary choice. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or the in-laws? Please let us know. Never force someone to host a meal that they don't want to. I threw away the elf on the shelf and ruined Christmas after my husband's prank. For context, this year was the first time we would try the elf on the shelf with our kids. We have 3 kids, Lucas who's 9, Andy who's 8, and Claire who's 5, where Lucas and Andy are from our past relationships. However, Miles, my husband who's 37, has accepted Andy as his, and so did I. Every Christmas is special for Andy. His birthday is on December 24th. His dad started a tradition where Santa would have consideration with him for being a kid of Christmas, so he feels magical and special. I always try to give him that. Last year, I left Santa Claus footsteps, ate a carrot, and grass that he left for Rudolph, stuff like that. My husband doesn't think it's a good idea I do all that for him, and I'm showing favoritism, so we should shut it down because of my ex's decision to create a tradition without considering my other kids' feelings. I disagree since I do consider the 3 of them mine, but he asked if we could do something else, like the elf on the shelf. I had no problem with it, but I didn't know how that works. He explained it to me quickly, and since he was the one who offered, I let him do it. We bought the cute elf. My kids named it Bob. Later, my husband explained to them that they should behave and never touch or hold Bob if they don't want it to be naughty. At first, it was cute to see them spy on Bob, try to see it fly each night. Andy was the most excited of all. I found him one night talking with it, asking it if Santa still remembered him. But my husband took seriously the behave or Bob would be naughty part. Lucas was his first victim after he didn't do his chores. The next day, his face was drawn on with Sharpie markers. Then Claire, who touched Bob, and her favorite onesie was destroyed. Apparently, Bob had cut some pieces of it while she was sleeping. Miles was having fun, but I could see my kids weren't. I talked to him about how we should lower the pranks. He agreed, but wanted to catch Andy since he hadn't broken any rules. I told him that Bob's supposed to tell Santa instead of being naughty. We argued, but he finally agreed. Fast forward, it's Christmas Eve, and in the afternoon, we had some of Andy's friends to celebrate his birthday. So the kids were playing in the backyard, but my husband looked sus. I decided to look for Bob. It was supposed to be in the kitchen, but it wasn't there. I asked Miles where it was, and he told me, no idea. I started getting paranoid, but Andy asked me if we could cut the cake already. I put my best face on and went for it. The cake was in a box, and when Andy opened the box, he started crying. I took a look, and it's ruined. Bob was covered in all of it, appearing as if he had been eating the cake. Half of the cake wasn't even there anymore. Miles started laughing, and so did some of the other parents. My blood is boiling, and I grab Bob and throw it in the trash. Then I grabbed Miles. We have a terrible argument. He calls me a jerk for what I did to Bob, that I've ruined it. How are we supposed to keep the magic with our kids if I wasn't supposed to touch Bob? Edit. Hi everyone. So the responses have been really overwhelming. I'm sorry it took me some time to answer. I was kind of avoiding the post. 1. Andy's dad is from Canada. He visits Andy every spring, summer, and on Christmas break. This year he stayed for his job, so he isn't an absent parent. 2. After Andy's birthday, I told Miles to get out of the house, and so he did. He spent Christmas with my in-laws. I stayed with the kids, and all of them slept in Andy's room. My kids didn't want to leave their brother alone. The next morning, we opened the gifts, and I made sure that Andy could feel special after what happened on his birthday. So I wrote a note from Bob, saying that he's sorry if he scared him and his siblings. He didn't do his job correctly, so now he would be flying to the North Pole with Santa. And when he asked if Santa still remembered him, he did. Santa was really happy to see him. 3. My kids and I are okay. We're sleeping at my parents' house, and we would celebrate New Year's Eve here too. 4. Yes, Claire was using the onesie while she was sleeping. My husband took the idea out of a TikTok. And no, Andy didn't do anything to be attacked by Bob. Not the jerk. He ruined the birthday party with his juvenile prank, as he most likely ruined the joyful and childlike spirit of the occasion for the 2 other kids with the other earlier stupid pranks. What a horrible Christmas tradition to scare your kids with. A doll that watches over them and exacts vengeance. I usually don't tend to say this, but this action on your husband's behalf is horrible and worth of divorce papers being delivered. Elf on the Shelf is supposed to be a tradition to keep the kids' spirits and hopes for Christmas, not something the parents can use as an excuse to be bullies with their kids. It's okay to joke with it a little, but he took it way too far. Kids remember this kind of stuff, and now Andy would have a terrible core memory of his birthday. Also, ask Miles why he was so obsessed on getting Andy. Like, that's what freaked me out the most. Please, OP, get away from this dude, not the jerk. Just so I'm clear, 1. You and Andy's father came up with something to take the sting out of your son having a birthday on Christmas Eve, something which must truly suck as a kid. 2. Your husband decides that this is favoritism. 3. Your husband uses a toy elf to start bullying the kids, destroying Claire's favorite onesie. What? 4. Andy's behaving himself, however, and therefore Bob is unable to do anything to him. 5. This so annoys your husband that he decides to ruin your son's 8th birthday by destroying his cake in an act of pure, unadulterated spite. OP, you're not the jerk, but my God, your husband surely is. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or is her husband? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for answering the door to my in-laws with oily hair that's been wrapped in plastic wrap? On Christmas Day, my in-laws came around to see my partner, son, and I. We had no idea they were coming around. They had never mentioned it, and we had told them that we were wanting our first Christmas as a family to be quiet and just the 3 of us. We were planning on just hanging around the house, wearing PJs, eating takeout food, playing video games while son took a nap. As this was the plan, I had decided to do a heavy oiling on my hair and wrap it up in plastic wrap to keep the heat in. My partner is cool with me doing heavy oiling. Usually I wear it to bed with my hair wrapped in plastic wrap and my bonnet on top, and he had encouraged that I did a heavy oil during the day on Christmas. In the early afternoon, I went to the door and my in-laws were there. Mother-in-law, father-in-law, and brother-in-law. They had decided that we had already had the morning to laze about and that they had come around so that son could open his presents. Son is 7 months old. He has no interest in presents and has no idea what's going on, which is why we were having such a low-key Christmas. They weren't impressed that we weren't dressed, but even less impressed that I had such oily hair. Mother-in-law took me aside in the kitchen and went off on me for not taking pride in my appearance and for looking so slobby when I should have expected them to turn up. I told mother-in-law that she should just be glad that we had clothes on. Yesterday, we both received texts from mother-in-law and brother-in-law having a go for the state we were in, and for me having oily hair that was wrapped in plastic wrap as I looked ridiculous. Mother-in-law expressed her disdain at my comments. Partner messaged them back and told them that we are allowed to dress how we like in our own home, and if I want to oil my hair, then I can. Mother-in-law has been messaging me separately, telling me that I looked slobby and should be ashamed of myself, as partner shouldn't have to see me in that state. While partner is really supportive of what I do to care for myself, it's got me wondering if this was a jerk move on my part. Am I the jerk for answering the door with my hair heavily oiled? Not the jerk. Showing up without an invitation or any forewarning is very rude. Not the jerk. You're home and you didn't have plans, so you can do whatever you want. Your partner's support and responses are awesome though. Nice to see such a supportive partner on one of these for a change. Man tried to dine and dash. He left his jacket with his ID in the pocket. This happened just earlier today. Not to me, but to a server in a different section during our shift. It was the end of the lunch rush, and this man who looked around mid-20s came in alone, but said he was waiting for someone else. He ordered a beer and some wings to start. 20 minutes go by, and whoever he was waiting for still isn't there. He orders an entree anyway, telling us that he probably got stood up, his exact words. About halfway through his meal, he's talking on the phone. He gets up, leaving his jacket on the seat, and walks towards the front. He tells the hostess, "I'll be right back. I just want to take this call outside, but my jacket is on the seat." Then, without waiting for an answer, he walks out the door. 15 minutes later, he's gone and nowhere in sight. The hostess felt so bad, and she said something along the lines of, "I shouldn't have just let him leave, but I thought he would come right back since he left his jacket here." Immediately, me and the man's server went and found it. Lo and behold, we checked the pockets and find some sort of card for his workplace with his photo, name, and work email. My coworker recognized his photo, so we emailed him and basically told him that if he didn't come back to pay for his meal, we would be calling the cops because we have security cameras that caught him. He was back within the hour. Edit. At the restaurant I work at, and a lot of the ones around us, people use jackets and bags and stuff like that as props. It's a pretty common dine and dash tactic in my area. I thought that was a pretty common thing in general, but I guess not though. He was also incredibly angry when he came in to pay, which I should have mentioned originally. But my son needs to watch Bluey. Last night, when I went to sign in to open Netflix, I found that my TV had been signed out. Went to sign back in and couldn't do it. It had been about a year since I had last signed in, so I assumed that I just forgot my password and requested to reset it. When I went to my email, I saw an email from Netflix this morning saying my password had been successfully changed. Obviously, red flag, so I went through all of our subscription services and updated passwords and changed my email password just in case. Got a call from my brother's ex-wife, let's call her Kate, about an hour ago. They've been divorced for over 4 years now, asking me why I changed my password. I didn't realize that she still had my account info, was a bit annoyed, and told her that someone had changed the password on me and that I didn't feel comfortable giving out my account info, especially not to someone I wasn't in contact with. Jumping back a bit, my in-laws are staying at our home, and at night, after everyone goes to bed, I guess we have 4 devices in our home running our Netflix account simultaneously. When she called, Kate explained how she tried to get onto our account on Christmas night and was greeted with a message that there were too many users on our account currently, so she couldn't access it. She got the idea that it would be totally fine with me if she logged into our Netflix account and changed the password so that her and her new husband could watch their show. Said this calmly, like it was the most reasonable thing in the world. I nearly lost it. I have no idea how anyone would think it would be okay to change someone else's password because you're too cheap to pay for it yourself. I told her I don't want to hear from her anymore. I'm not giving her our info, and I hung up. 15 minutes later, she called my wife and asked for the Disney Plus password. I was lazy and I had the same account info for each streaming service, and apparently she figured this out and was logged into several of our services. When I realized who my wife was talking to and what about, I motioned for the phone. Kate was just whining that she at least needed to have access to Disney Plus so her son, who's 18 months old, could watch Bluey, and that he just needed it to be able to get ready for bed. I told her to buzz off and hung up. Great way to ruin my mood for the night. No, you did not reserve the shuttle. I work at a hotel near a major airport. So naturally, we have an airline shuttle to take our guests back and forth. Our shuttle runs 24/7, but after the lockdown, we only have one shuttle, while before we had two shuttles to decrease wait time. Currently, it runs on a half-hour schedule, so it leaves the hotel on the top and bottom of the hour and picks up at the airport on the 15 and 45. The only way to be fair to our guests and keep the schedule accurate is to leave the hotel right on the dot, and we only wait for a few minutes if you call down ahead of time to let us know that you are running late. Because the shuttle only fits so many people, we tell our guests at check-in to sign up for a time slot so we can ensure we don't end up with 20 people showing up for a shuttle that only fits 12. Though we are not required to do so, most of us at the desk explain to the guest that they need to be in the lobby 5 minutes before the time they signed up for, as the shuttle leaves right on time and does not wait. Apparently, the FOM checked him in and didn't mention that part, which in my opinion was a mistake, but it's not something he requires us to do. And I'm the one who put in the effort to train my coworkers to do that, just in case, as I'm not a supervisor and no one's required to take my advice and tell it to the guests even though it prevents this sort of thing. Today, a guest who signed up for a 7 a.m. shuttle came down at 7:03 a.m. I informed the guest that the shuttle had departed and he would need to wait for the next available shuttle. He said to reserve him another shuttle immediately, and I informed him that he would be signed up for the next shuttle at 7:30. He reiterated that he wanted to reserve a shuttle right now and that he had already reserved himself a shuttle for 7. I told him again that he would be signed up for the next available shuttle, which just got me another insistence that he had reserved the shuttle. I realized that he was under the impression that he was oh so special and the shuttle was leaving at 7 a.m. for him specifically, rather than leaving at 7 a.m. for our guests in general, because that's when it always leaves. I tried to explain to him that no, he did not reserve a shuttle specifically for himself that was guaranteed to take him when he needed it, but rather he just put his name down to let us know how many people to expect for the already scheduled departure. Of course, he's super special and important, so he kept reiterating that he had reserved the shuttle and therefore we needed to get another one for him immediately. I told him we have one driver, so there's no way to get another shuttle going right then and there for him, which was met with, you guessed it,
But I reserved it.
no sir, you did not reserve it. You said you'd be here for the 7 a.m. and then you were late and had left. Oh, and his wife came down 5 minutes later. So even if he had bothered to let us know he was going to be late, we wouldn't have been able to wait that long for the entire party to be ready. I will say the one good thing he had going for his behavior was that he never invoked his status, highest status at our hotel outside of lifetime or owner status. But he did ask for the manager's card, and I'm sure we'll get a bad review out of it.
Karen gets upset with me because I ate too much at her Christmas dinner. As a child, whenever I was invited to people's houses, my mom told me it was etiquette to eat the food they made. She would always tell me to put a considerable amount and eat all of it since it would be rude not to. First, she said it would be wasting food, and second, it would seem as if I didn't enjoy the food, which is mean since a lot of effort was put into making it. I've always followed this rule and thought it was true. If I cooked a buttload of food and no one ate any of it, I'd be heartbroken. My boyfriend of 7 months invited me to his family Christmas dinner. I've met his parents very briefly, but nothing too formal. Anyway, we get to the food and I was pretty hungry and everything looked really amazing. I made sure to fill my plate, but not overfill, just equal amounts of everything on the table. I ate it all, and to be honest, was pretty stuffed. His mother then asked me if I wanted seconds. There was still a lot of food on the table. I took her up on the offer and put a bit more of the pasta salad on my plate. My boyfriend did give me a strange look, but I thought nothing of it at the time. Dinner comes, and I chose to eat a slice of cheesecake. We then had coffee, all sitting around the fire and telling funny stories. Everyone seemed like they were in a very good mood, and everything was great. After everything, I was honestly so happy because I was worried about dinner and meeting his parents, but I thought that everything went well. We left his parents' house in separate cars as I came directly from my parents' house to him. We reach my apartment, and I can tell he's totally ticked off. I ask him what's wrong, and he just blew up in my face, saying that I had no manners, telling me that he had never seen me eat as much as I did at his parents' house, and that it was very embarrassing. After further prying, he said that in his culture, when you eat a lot at a person's house, it's disrespectful because you should never go to a house on an empty stomach. He said it makes a person look desperate. He said on the car ride home, his mom was talking about how embarrassing and unmannered I was to eat so much. I told him that she told me to put seconds, and he said that's done to be a good hostess, but a guest should never take up that offer. I explained to him my reasoning, and he called that BS. I honestly feel terrible, but told him if he explained to me beforehand, I wouldn't have eaten so much. But he said he thought it was common knowledge. It's been 2 days, and neither of us will really talk until the other one apologizes. I know it's petty to not apologize, but I sincerely don't think I did anything wrong. But I guess that's why I'm here. Edit. I've been debating on whether revealing where my boyfriend is from. I have been receiving a lot of comments, so his family is Arab. I myself am Hispanic. Not the jerk. That's so toxic. You didn't even know about these cultural rules. I hate saying break up with him, but break up with him. You were just trying to be nice, and you enjoyed the food. My sister ruined our Christmas by announcing her pregnancy. Way worse than it sounds. I, 24 female, am the youngest of 4, and I've never been particularly close to my eldest sister Jenny, 37 female. She started dating her now ex-husband Sam, 38 male, when they were in high school, so he's pretty much been around my entire life. Sam is a really great guy. He was an older brother to me growing up, and my other sisters and I all have a great relationship with him. Jenny and Sam have 2 kids together, my nephew and niece, who are 8 and 5. About 3 years ago, Jenny and Sam's relationship completely fell apart, and she left him and moved to a different city. I've heard both sides of the story, and I know I'm inherently biased against my sister because she left my ex-brother-in-law to raise 2 kids by himself. Things were pretty rough after she left, but we all pitched in and did our best to help with the kids. My sister and Sam eventually finalized their divorce, and she gave up custody of the kids and is very low contact with them. I know Sam blamed himself for her leaving because she had accused him of not loving her as much as he loved the kids, but the rest of the family were firmly on his side. He did eventually move on and started dating one of his close friends at the beginning of the year. Fast forward to 2 months ago, my sister moved back to our city with her new boyfriend. She's only been to see her kids once, supervised, and my niece almost didn't recognize her. My parents still wanted the opportunity to finally have Christmas as a complete family again. I thought the whole thing would be a disaster before it even began. I knew my ex-brother-in-law only planned to stay long enough to drop off the kids and say a quick hello to everyone else. In the 15-minute window he was at my parents' house, my sister announced that she was pregnant, and things went downhill after that. The kids were so confused, and my niece asked if the new baby would live with them. My sister laughed and said the baby would live with her and her new boyfriend. My ex-brother-in-law left with the kids in tow, and I kind of lost it. I yelled at my sister and called her selfish and cruel and a whole slew of insults. Anything I could come up with at that moment before storming out myself. My other sisters support my actions, but my parents are disappointed that I reacted that way and made a scene during Christmas. They're not demanding that I apologize or anything, but have put me on one heck of a guilt trip and want me to resolve things with my sister. I'm perfectly happy not being in contact with her given what she's put my niece and nephew through, but I do wonder if I reacted too harshly. Was I the jerk? Not the jerk. Your sister turned Christmas into a way to dunk on her ex and her own kids. The kids were so confused and asked my niece if the new baby would live with them. My sister laughed and said the baby would live with her and her boyfriend. This is the worst part. She told her own kids that their half-sibling wouldn't be staying with them and laughed at them. She's cruel and heartless. Definitely not the jerk. Seriously, how terrible of a person do you have to be to rub it in your own kids' faces that this new baby is wanted and they aren't? My heart breaks for those poor kids. OP, not the jerk.
Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard. Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.